Chapter 25:18. Passing the Formation. The Celestial King in Black had harbored no positive feelings toward Ling Han. Everyone knew this. Now Ling Han had appeared here, while the Celestial King in Black was nowhere to be seen. What did this signify? The Celestial King in Black had been killed. Gasp. If this were true, the information that it revealed was far too terrifying. Firstly, it was extremely difficult for Celestial Kings to kill fellow Celestial Kings. This was recognized by everyone. As long as the gap in cultivation level wasn't large, a Celestial King wouldn't be able to stop another Celestial King from fleeing. Secondly, how long had passed? Yet, a Celestial King had already been killed. To kill the Celestial King in Black with such ease, just how overwhelming did Ling Han's battle prowess need to be? He had killed him in such a short amount of time, and he had more so stopped him from fleeing. With these thoughts in mind, the Celestial Kings couldn't help but feel uneasy. They were filled with apprehension. Ling Han simply replied with a smile. He didn't explain anything. He continued to gaze at the city gates before him, with the shards of the symbols floating around his mind. He attempted to piece them together. Strangely, however, no matter how hard he tried to commit these symbols to memory, they would slowly fade away with the passing of time. After just 2 hours, they completely vanished from his mind. He couldn't recall them no matter what. Friend, this stage is about trying to piece some words together. You have to rearrange these shards into the correct words within a limited amount of time. If you're correct, you'll be invited into the city, the Plum Blossom Celestial King said. Ling Han grumbled in his mind. Who had come up with this stupid test? He nodded at the Plum Blossom Celestial King, expressing his thanks. The other Celestial Kings humphed in their minds upon seeing this. They were slightly displeased. Ling Han looked at the city gates again. Meanwhile, the Plum Blossom and the others also did the same thing, with all of them mulling over the shards. The words and symbols would change all the time, so it would be useless even if they had passed the stage before. They would still have to challenge it again. As such, it was also impossible to rely on fortune. Ling Han focused his full attention on the task this time. When the shards appeared in his mind, he didn't try to immediately piece them together. Instead, he started to analyze them first. After all, different words would definitely have slight differences. Sure enough, it wasn't long before he separated these shards into 20 different groups. He then multitasked, rearranging these 20 words at once. With his powerful divine sense, this was naturally no difficult task. A short while later, the 20 words lit up in unison. Very well, you have solved the puzzle. You now have the right to enter the city. Don't be too arrogant. Ling Han read this in his mind. Whoosh! A sheet of light swept over, immediately drawing him into the city. Pooh! The 5 Celestial Kings violently spluttered again. Their eyes were wide with shock and disbelief. He had solved the puzzle that quickly. His achievements will definitely be limitless, the Celestial King in Green said with emotion. The Plum Blossom Celestial King suddenly faltered before saying, I've heard that Yang Zhishuan was defeated by a mysterious person before. In fact, this person ripped his battle armor apart with his bare hands. However, he hadn't even reached the Celestial King tier yet. Before, I merely thought that this was a rumor. Now, however, it's that brat, the 4 Celestial Kings exclaimed in unison. With a shudder, Ling Han had already appeared in the city. However, this city was empty and desolate, with not a single person in sight. It was filled with a sense of gloominess and eeriness. However, Ling Han was unafraid as he strode forward. Tap, tap, tap. Footsteps traveled over from in front of him, after which 2 figures appeared. They were both around 6 meters in height, and they both radiated with the luster of metal. Ling Han was slightly astonished. These were war soldiers. Crackle. The 2 war soldiers attacked in unison, shooting beams of red light from their eyes. These beams of light swept toward Ling Han. Ling Han raised his hand to block the attacks, with the 4 beams of red light all landing on his hand. It burns. Ling Han was astonished. This wasn't the regulations of fire. Instead, it was a type of violent and chaotic energy that could cause even him to feel a burning sensation. This was simply incredible. It was no wonder that the foreign realm was feeling immense pressure from the dark inverse realm. In fact, they had even been forced to create a battle beast such as Little Terror. This was because of the overwhelming power of war soldiers. Moreover, unlike celestial kings, these war soldiers could be mass-produced. Once they reached a certain number, they would indeed become terrifying. Explode! Ling Han roared. Boom! His voice transformed into a shock wave. Pang pang! The two war soldiers were instantly blasted into smithereens, unable to withstand his crushing fifth heaven battle prowess. Ling Han continued to crush all opponents in his way, quickly making it out of the city. What appeared before him was a large river. Again, he was unable to fly across this river. There was some kind of mysterious power in the air that would strike him down with thunder if he attempted to. Meanwhile, numerous rocks would float to the surface of the river from time to time. However, there was seemingly no pattern to when they appeared or disappeared. Ling Han understood that he needed to cross the river by using these stones as platforms. The length of my strides will clearly be limited as well. Anyhow, let me have a try first, Ling Han said to himself. He jumped onto the first stone, unleashing his full power. He then leaped toward another. Plop! He immediately fell into the water. With a boom, the roaring river directly washed him downstream. It took him 15 minutes to run back to the starting point. It was clear that there was no limit on how many times he could fail. However, if one wanted to make it onto the ranking list with the other supreme prodigies, they naturally couldn't fail even once. Ling Han stood still, observing the changes in the stones and analyzing the patterns of their appearance. After one day, he finally stepped forward again. Xiao xiao xiao. He leaped across the stones, crossing the river in a single breath. He glanced back before continuing to advance. A short while later, a gate appeared before him. This wasn't another test. Instead, this was the gate of the world's paramount martial academy. He had passed the 9 Deaths formation, or rather its first level. A person flew out from the gate. It was a middle-aged man who had 3 ribbons of iridescent light around him. He looked at Ling Han and said, "Congratulations on passing the 9 Deaths formation. From now on, you're a proper disciple of the academy. Dare I ask for your name?" Ling Han pondered for a brief moment before replying, "Zhang San." The middle-aged man's expression involuntarily froze. "Even if you don't want to reveal your identity, can you please put in some effort and think of a more normal name? It doesn't require that much brain juice, does it? Is it really all right for you to act like this? Friend Zhang San, do you want to challenge the second level of the 9 Deaths formation?" The middle-aged man asked with a smile. "Only after passing the second level can you leave your name on the eternal stones." He pointed to the row of 8 stone tablets beside him, all of which were dotted with names. Ling Han looked toward the first stone tablet. These were the 100 people who had passed the second level in the quickest time. The first name that jumped out at him was Lin Xiaoyang. Lord Lin Xiaoyang is the eldest son of Heavenly Venerate Lin Luo, the middle-aged man said with respect and reverence. Lord Lin Xiaoyang's cultivation talent isn't astounding, yet he's a person who is much wiser than he appears. Moreover, he's also a prodigy who bloomed later, with each of his footsteps solid and sturdy. Right now, he's already a 6th-tier Heavenly Venerate. A thought occurred to Ling Han. Lin Luo was Zhou Heng's master, and he was more so a 7th-tier Heavenly Venerate. This branch was far too freakish. Not only was the father a 7th-tier Heavenly Venerate, but even his son and disciple were 6th-tier Heavenly Venerates. This was truly something to envy. He looked down, and the second name that appeared was Han Yeyun. After that was Lu Ziyu. The middle-aged man continued to introduce them, saying, "Lord Han Yeyun, Lord Lu Ziyu, Lord Nfei Yu, and Lord Long Yenyun are all prodigies from several epochs ago. As of now, they've all become Heavenly Venerates. 6th was Guang He, and 7th was AMU. Ling Han's pupils contracted. He had heard of this person before. He was a freak among freaks. Chapter 25-19. Second Level. AMU was a supreme prodigy for the ages. He was ranked 7th on the stone tablet. However, this was only the ranking list for the second level of the 9 Deaths formation. so it didn't signify that he was the seventh strongest out of all those who had passed this formation before. Even so, such a high ranking was a reflection of his freakish abilities. Ling Han was more curious about why Wally wasn't ranked among the top few people. Oh right. Even though his analysis ability was number 1 in the world, peerless among all people, engaging in fights wasn't his strong suit. Thus, passing levels that pertain to calculations and analysis would be extremely easy for Wally. However, if he needed to battle, he would need to exert much more effort. Ling Han looked further down. In 8th place was Du Shi, another supreme prodigy of the current generation. In 9th place was Heavenborn. With Heavenborn's ability, he only managed to rank 9th. It could be said that Heavenborn was the culmination and embodiment of an entire dimension's essence. Thus, he would be no less freakish than Wally. No, he was most likely even more freakish than Wally. After all, the latter had still been created by humans. Meanwhile, Heavenborn was formed by the celestial realm itself. Where had Heavenborn been inferior? Was it in battle, or was it in analysis and predictions? Ling Han believed that it was the latter. After all, in terms of battle, Heavenborn's physique was far too powerful. His body was equivalent to divine metal, so it wouldn't be difficult for him to challenge all 9 levels of the 9 Deaths formation. Even if he couldn't defeat his opponents, he could still flee with ease. Thus, he had definitely been beaten in terms of analytical ability. Even so, the fact that he had made it onto the Eternal Stone proved that his abilities had surpassed those of the countless people before him. However, there were still those who could suppress him. Moreover, some of them belonged to the same generation. In other words, Heavenborn was still slightly inferior in this area. Even though he was nurtured and born by heaven and earth, there were still limits to his abilities. Ling Han nodded in his mind. He became even more confident that he could defeat Heavenborn. This was certainly not an invincible and insurmountable opponent. Ling Han continued to look down. In 10th place was Hua Ferong. This was as expected of the number 1 celestial maiden of the ages. Even here, she was still as impressive as always. Looking further down, Ji Wuming was ranked 29th, while the Rain Emperor was ranked 79th. Even though this seemed low, one had to realize that being able to make it onto the Eternal Stone was already an impressive feat in itself. Where's the Empress and Hun Yo? Were they not powerful enough, or was it because of some other reason? Ling Han felt like both explanations were possible. Even though the Empress and Hun Yo were also monarch stars, their evolution indices had only been around 10. It wasn't all that high. In this academy, however, there were freaks who possessed evolution indices of close to 12. Trying to surpass these freaks would naturally be a challenge. Moreover, with the Empress' proud nature, perhaps she would find it beneath her to compete with others anyway. Hun Yo was more so unreliable when it came to these matters. It was entirely possible that she was uninterested in these rankings. He swept his gaze around. However, before he could even look toward the second stone tablet, several people walked out from the academy gates. Heavenborn. His pupils instantly contracted. The person in the lead was none other than Heavenborn. There were already 5 ribbons of iridescent light around him, and he was like a revered leader surrounded by underlings as a dozen or so people followed behind him. Each of them was a celestial king, surrounded by 1 to 5 ribbons of iridescent light. Lord Heavenborn is going to challenge the 9 Deaths formation again. This time, perhaps Lord Heavenborn will break Lord Du's record. The celestial kings conversed among themselves as they walked, completely ignoring Ling Han and the middle-aged man. Perhaps they simply viewed them as a celestial king with his follower. As always, Heavenborn possessed a formidable aura. It was as if his body contained a primordial beast, with each of his steps causing the earth to shudder. He entered from the location of the 4th stone tablet, with his body immediately vanishing without a trace. Here, each stone tablet rested in front of the corresponding level of the 9 Deaths formation. For example, the first stone tablet corresponded to the second level of the 9 Deaths formation. Meanwhile, the 4th stone tablet corresponded to the 5th level of the 9 Deaths formation. Right now, Heavenborn was already a 5th heaven celestial king, so he was also going to challenge the 5th level of the formation. He didn't plan to improve his results in the previous levels. Ling Han swept his gaze over the remaining stone tablets. The names on these tablets were quite different. For example, Lin Xiaoyang's name was nowhere to be seen. However, with the ability to become a 6th-tier heavenly venerate, would he not have the ability to leave his name on these stone tablets? It was clear that he hadn't wasted any of his time or effort here. Or perhaps he had left his name here before, yet he had erased it afterward for one reason or another. Meanwhile, Heavenborn's name appeared on each of the first 4 tablets. On the first 3 stone tablets, he was ranked from 9th to 10th on each one. On the 4th stone tablet, however, he was only ranked 19th. Was this because Heavenborn's power suddenly became insufficient? This was naturally not the case. This was because Du Shi was only ranked 18th, while AMU was only ranked 17th. Ling Han pondered over the possible reasons. For example, it would definitely be extremely easy for him to pass the 2nd level of the 9 Deaths formation. This was because his true battle prowess had already reached the 5th heaven. This was a crushing advantage. In this sense, his results would naturally be better than if his battle prowess were only at the 2nd heaven. This was without a doubt. This was most likely the same situation for Heavenborn. For the first 3 levels, he had passed them by relying on the crushing advantage of his cultivation level. However, upon reaching the 5th level, he would no longer enjoy an advantage in terms of cultivation level. Thus, his results naturally declined. In some sense, Heavenborn's battle prowess while at the 5th heaven could only be ranked 19th out of everyone in history. Moreover, this was only among those who had decided to earnestly challenge this formation. Perhaps there were some prodigies who kept an extremely low profile and didn't try to create any records at all. For example, Lin Luo. He was a 7th-tier heavenly venerate, yet his name didn't appear on any of the stone tablets. The same could be said for Zhou Heng and Chu Hao. Ling Han looked at the middle-aged man with a smile and said, "I still haven't asked for your esteemed name." "Ouyang Ming," the middle-aged man replied with a smile. Ling Han looked at the first stone tablet and said, "Please wait for a moment. I also want to try my hand at this formation." "Please go ahead," Ouyang Ming said, gesturing an invitation. He was also extremely curious about how prodigious Ling Han was. This would also dictate how he treated him in the future. Ling Han entered the 9 Deaths formation from the location of the first stone tablet. His surroundings didn't appear to change at all. However, after taking a few steps, a wooden puppet suddenly appeared before him. This was identical to the situation in the first level. Boom! The wooden puppet immediately charged over, throwing a punch. Symbols lit up, and it was clear that it had a battle prowess at the peak stage of the 2nd heaven. This was the 2nd level of the formation, so all of the challenges were designed with 2nd heaven celestial kings in mind. Ling Han attacked, easily defeating his opponent. After several more battles, he appeared before an expanse of fog. Sure enough, this was identical to the first level. The only difference was that the opponents were more powerful. He entered the fog, immediately inviting attacks from powerful enemies. Their battle prowess was slightly stronger, and perhaps even ordinary emperor tiers would be unable to rival them. Ling Han advanced with confidence. These opponents were merely small fry to him. After a short while, he arrived before a city that sat between 2 towering mountains. This was again identical to the first level. He had to rearrange these shards into words. He looked toward the city gates. Boom! Countless shards surged into his mind, greater in number and more chaotic in manner. Sure enough, it was much more difficult than before. Like before, Ling Han first separated these shards into groups. After sorting them into over 40 groups, he then rearranged them all at once. After 15 or so minutes, he suddenly opened his eyes. Numerous complete symbols pulsated in his eyes. This time, it wasn't words that had been formed. Instead, these were symbols of the Great Tao. This was extremely mysterious. Symbols of the Great Tao could actually be used like this. Whoosh! He was swept into the city. However, the symbols of the Great Tao didn't vanish. At this moment, Ling Han suddenly started to hesitate. Should he continue to advance, or should he stop to investigate these symbols? He had a feeling that these symbols were extraordinary. After a brief moment of hesitation, Ling Han eventually decided to sit down. Compared to strength, mere reputation was worth nothing. Chapter 25-28. Ling Han sat down, completely focused as he pondered the symbols of the Great Tao. He was in no hurry to pass this formation. After all, this was a rare opportunity for him to comprehend these symbols of the Great Tao. However, if he wanted to challenge this formation, he could do so at any time. After at least 3 days, Ling Han finally stood up in satisfaction. He had reaped huge benefits this time. These symbols of the Great Tao had most likely been gathered and formed by the magnificent power of heavenly venerates. To a third heaven celestial king such as him, they were indescribably useful and beneficial. It was no wonder that some prodigies hadn't made it onto the Eternal Stone. It was because they had been distracted here, spending a great deal of time comprehending these symbols of the Great Tao. The gap between these prodigies was already small to begin with, so could they afford to waste 3 days here? Even though there was no explicit rule or explanation, Ling Han had a feeling that each person would only have a single chance to comprehend these symbols. Such rare opportunities could only come through fortune, not through searching. Ling Han pondered for a moment. Should he challenge this formation again? Making a conscious effort to achieve a higher ranking was not something that he liked. However, in order to suppress Heavenborn, he was willing to challenge this level again. He strode forward, easily breezing through the war soldiers that stood before him. War soldiers at the second heaven naturally couldn't slow him down. He arrived before the large river again. Just like before, stone platforms bobbed up and down, with their speed incredibly astonishing. There was even less of a pattern this time, and this gave Ling Han a huge headache. After an entire day, he finally made sense of the patterns behind the movements. He immediately leaped forward. Xiao, xiao, xiao. In just a few dozen jumps, he arrived on the other side of the river. After arriving here, he had essentially passed the 9 Deaths formation already. Sure enough, after walking for a short while, a stone tablet appeared before him again. Surprisingly, this was exactly where he had entered the formation from. Congratulations on passing the 2nd level, Ouyang said. He was still standing in the same spot, and a smile spread across his face when he saw Ling Han arrive. Even though Ling Han's result was unable to win him a spot on the Eternal Stone, just his ability to pass the 2nd level alone was already outstanding. At the very least, it deserved his respect. Follow me, I'll bring you to your residence, he said. However, Ling Han waved his hand and said, I want to challenge this level again. Ouyang frowned upon hearing this. What was the hurry? Moreover, Ling Han had only just passed the level, so how much could his result improve if he immediately challenged it again? In any case, he had spent 4 entire days to pass the level, a time far inferior to what was needed to enter the rankings. The others all waited for several years before challenging the formation again, raising their power to a peak state. With Ling Han's request, not only would his result not improve, but it might even decline. However, since Ling Han insisted, there would be no point for Ouyang to object. All right, I'll wait for you, he said. Ling Han smiled before entering the 2nd level again. There was nothing much to say about the early challenges. He simply steamrolled them with his crushing power. After arriving before the city gates, he unleashed all of his power. If he wanted to defeat Heavenborn, he wouldn't be able to do so in the stages that involved battle. His only chance to defeat Heavenborn was in terms of comprehension and analytical ability. Meanwhile, Ling Han was extremely confident in these areas. After a short while, Ling Han successfully rearranged the 40 words. This time, they were genuine words and not symbols of the Great Tao. He was drawn into the city, where he immediately unleashed his ferocious power. Pang pang pang. His fists were invincible, and he bulldozed through the war soldiers before arriving at the large river. Even though this was still the 2nd level, the patterns of the bobbling rock platforms changed again. Ling Han took another day to comprehend the mysterious patterns of their movement. He immediately bounded forward. Xiao, xiao, xiao. In a few bounds, he arrived on the opposite bank. He then strode forward. When he exited the formation, he coincidentally saw Heavenborn also walking out from behind the 4th stone tablet. His brows were furrowed, and it was clear that he was extremely displeased. It was evident that he hadn't achieved any breakthroughs in his result. Thus, he was naturally extremely displeased. Friend. Ouyang stammered as he walked over. His voice was quivering. Ling Han looked over. What was he so astonished about? Congratulations, friend. You've made it into the rankings. Ouyang finally said. He could finally form a proper sentence again. He was truly unable to fathom how Ling Han's results had improved by so much. Last time, it had taken Ling Han 4 entire days to pass the level. This time, however, he had directly made it into the rankings. Ling Han nodded in acknowledgement. He knew that he would definitely make it into the rankings. However, the most important thing was where he ranked. Where did I rank? He asked. 8th. Ouyang replied. This result was far too terrifying. In terms of the prodigies who were still at the Martial Academy, only AMU had achieved a better result than this. Du Shi, Heavenborn, Hua Ferong, and the others had all been pushed down the ranking. 8th. Ling Han was slightly astonished. Even though he hadn't performed to the best of his potential, he was still slightly disappointed that he had only ranked 8th. In his mind, it should have been fairly easy to challenge the top 5 positions. Now, however, the gap between them was still fairly large. However, upon further thought, he immediately felt at ease. At the end of the day, the celestial realm was only a super low-level dimension. Moreover, his evolution index was only 11, perhaps slightly higher. However, it definitely hadn't reached 12. That being the case, was it strange that his result was inferior to those freaks' results? Instead, this caused his fighting spirit to soar. He decided to compete with those freaks in the 3rd level after he fully recovered his cultivation. After all, this result was because of his crushing advantage in cultivation level. It didn't reflect his true abilities. This was evident by looking at the 5th level. AMU, Heavenborn, and the others were all ranked around 20th. Heavenborn had already turned around to leave, yet upon hearing Ouyang reply, he violently turned around. 8th. Then wouldn't he be pushed down? He swept his gaze over. Sure enough, his name had fallen from 9th to 10th. Displeasure instantly spread across Heavenborn's face. This was because he detested the feeling of being inferior to others. It was also because of this that he challenged this formation time and time again. He yearned to surpass everyone above him. Now, however, he had actually been suppressed by a new disciple. This ticked him off immensely. However, he immediately humphed before turning around to leave. This was only the 2nd level, after all. Thus, many people suppressed their cultivation level to challenge this formation. Even though their battle prowess would be suppressed, their divine sense wouldn't be affected at all. Thus, they would possess a huge advantage when it came to rearranging the words and crossing the river. Ling Han's cultivation level was unclear, so it was evident that he had concealed it on purpose. Perhaps he was a 9th heaven celestial king. Thus, Heavenborn felt he needed not pay any heed to this. The only people who could grab his attention were the Martial Academy's AMU, Du Shi, and so on. These were all prodigies who possessed evolution indices of 12 or above. As for these lowly cultivators who didn't even dare to show their cultivation or face, it was beneath him to pay any attention to them. Meanwhile, Ling Han gazed at Heavenborn's leaving figure. In the near future, he would defeat this person in a fair and square battle, not just through this kind of meaningless method. Friend Zhang, you're truly outstanding, Ouyang said in praise. Regardless of whether he was a high-level celestial king or not, his ability to enter the rankings alone was already a reflection of his boundless talent. Toward this kind of person, he didn't need to simply become associated with them. Instead, he needed to curry favor with and toad up to them. Ouyang brought Ling Han into the academy. This was an endless mountain range that looked like an entire world. Even with Ling Han's powerful vision, he still couldn't see the end. Under Ouyang arrangement, he received an abode that was rich with spiritual qi. This was a holy land for cultivation. After sending off Ouyang Ling Han took out the cauldron that he had purchased not long ago. He planned to test its ability to refine alchemical pills. Chapter 25-21. Returning to the 3rd heaven. The most special thing about this cauldron was its sturdiness. However, a good pill refinement cauldron needed more than just sturdiness. It also needed a powerful ability to resist flames. This was especially the case when it came to refining Celestial King tier pills. To refine such pills, One would need to use flames extracted from the great Tao of fire. Even divine metal would be slowly melted by such flames. Divine metal was sturdy, yet this didn't represent that it couldn't be damaged. It was just that it couldn't be comprehensively destroyed. Ling Han's comprehension of the great Tao of fire wasn't deep, but he had still developed a sliver of understanding because he had refined a piece of divine metal before. He immediately summoned the great Tao of fire to burn the cauldron. To his surprise, the cauldron didn't show any signs of softening even though it quickly became bright red. It was extremely resistant to flames. Upon further thought, Ling Han speculated that this was because some kind of peculiar clay had been added to the materials used in the making of this cauldron. Clay was far more resistant to flames than metal, so by mixing the two together, the resulting cauldron would naturally possess powerful resistance to flames. Of course, this couldn't be achieved with ordinary clay, nor could it be achieved with ordinary metal. In my view, this metal is most likely derived from the impurities produced in the process of purifying divine metal. Thus, it doesn't possess the intensity and murderous aura of divine metal, but its sturdiness can almost rival that of divine metal. The difference is that divine metal has the ability to regenerate itself, while this metal most likely doesn't. It's genuinely sturdy, but once it's damaged, it's genuinely damaged as well. Even after fixing it, there will still be imperfections. This is unlike divine metal, which is whole to begin with. As if it possesses life, it possesses the ability to heal and regenerate. However, to me, this cauldron is indeed very useful. I finally have a high-quality pill refinement cauldron. Ling Han was extremely satisfied. Right now, he naturally needed to refine Celestial King tier pills. Thus, his requirements for the necessary cauldron were also extremely strict. Otherwise, what would he do if the cauldron melted halfway through the pill refinement process? For example, refining the Celestial King pills had given him a massive headache. He put the cauldron aside. He then started to cultivate in seclusion, keeping an extremely low profile. This was even though countless people wanted to visit him. After all, regardless of how he had achieved it, his ability to enter the rankings proved a single point. His talent was lofty and boundless. Such a person was naturally worth buttering up to. However, Ling Han was in no mood to make new friends. Right now, his goal was to improve his cultivation. To say nothing of advancing to the fourth heaven, he at least had to return to the third heaven no matter what. He activated the full power of his physique. He then activated the regulations of time, accelerating time and increasing the speed of his cultivation. This was a transcendent dimension, so not only were there more regulations, but they were also more powerful. Indeed, even monarch-tier celestial kings from the celestial realm might be defeated by ordinary celestial kings from this realm. Thus, Ling Han wasn't simply undergoing a process of recultivation. At the same time, he was also improving his grasp of the regulations. The days passed one by one. Meanwhile, Ling Han's cultivation level also continued to rise. Each year, the Martial Academy would distribute an astonishing amount of cultivation resources. This was the only transcendent dimension in the Genesis world, so it naturally possessed an astonishingly rich amount of cultivation resources. Now that all of these resources had been gathered together, there was naturally enough to support the wild and fervent cultivation of these supreme prodigies. Ling Han naturally didn't use any of these resources. After all, he was still far from reaching the Celestial King tier. There was no hurry. In any case, these resources wouldn't go to waste. 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years. Before long, 7,000 years had already passed. To Celestial Kings, even though 7,000 years was more than just the blink of an eye, it was still an insignificant and short moment compared to their exorbitantly long lifespan. The world's paramount Martial Academy didn't experience any exciting incidents, either. Even though one or two more people had passed the 9 Deaths formation, becoming proper disciples of the Martial Academy, they hadn't been anywhere near as freakish as Ling Han. Thus, they naturally hadn't caused a ripple. Meanwhile, Ling Han had kept an extremely low profile this entire time, not showing himself once in the 7,000 years. As such, even though he had caused a huge commotion before, he was also gradually forgotten. Some people speculated that he had used some kind of peculiar technique to pass the formation, perhaps even exhausting his life force. It was because of this that he had achieved such an outstanding result. At the same time, It was also because of this that he had been recuperating all these years. Otherwise, why would he not show himself after achieving such an outstanding feat? If Ling Han exited seclusion at this moment and revealed his true identity, he could definitely still cause a huge commotion. However, if he didn't reveal his identity, perhaps not a single person would recognize him. It was at this moment that Ling Han finally concluded his seclusion. Third Heaven Celestial King. He had finally returned to his original cultivation level. Moreover, he had become even more powerful. However, even though I've become more powerful, the others have also grown more powerful as well. I don't possess any advantage. On the contrary, even though my power of regulations has improved, my body art hasn't seen any improvement at all. In reality, my advantage has been weakened, Ling Han murmured to himself. However, he wasn't disappointed in the least. This was because he was filled with confidence. He was more so filled with fighting spirit. Having competition was always good. Prodigies from countless dimensions are all gathered here, so perhaps there are some people who are keeping an extremely low profile. As such, there are most likely far more elites than those who appear on the Eternal Stone. I truly want to head out for a battle. Ling Han stood up. He had already rested for long enough. It was time to go out for a stroll. He first had a hearty gathering with his wives in the spatial celestial tool, after which he collected all of the cultivation resources that he had been given. He then left his abode, and casually strolled through the mountains. After arriving at the waist of the mountain, he saw that there was a library located here. He walked inside for a look. This library wasn't filled with ancient books, and it housed numerous jade seals instead. As long as one released their divine sense to make contact with a jade seal, they could construct a channel through which the information from the jade seal would travel through. This was extremely convenient and fast. Moreover, these jade seals could also become vessels that could host the divine senses of many people at once, allowing them to communicate and discuss their comprehensions. This was incredibly mysterious and wonderful. According to rumors, this process had been implemented after studying the technology of some technologically advanced dimensions. This library was extremely large, and it more so held countless jade seals. There were also dedicated rooms that only held a single jade seal, and many more people would be standing around these. It was due to the popularity of these jade seals that they had been placed into dedicated rooms. Ling Han walked up to the first jade seal that he encountered in the library. This was the largest jade seal, yet it didn't possess any cultivation technique or whatnot. Instead, this was a directory and catalog for the library. He scanned through the information. This library truly contained everything. There were jade seals about astrology, geography, history, pill refinement, tool refinement, and so on. Of course, there were even more on cultivation techniques, with many of them powerful enough to be regarded as paramount mystical powers in the celestial realm. Even Ninth Heaven Celestial King forces would fight to the death over them. Here, however, they were available for everyone to learn. Of course, this only applied to the disciples of the Martial Academy. To call itself the world's paramount, this academy was indeed powerful and domineering. Even Celestial King tier secret techniques were freely available for everyone to study. A thought suddenly occurred to Ling Han. Right now, only his Fists of Fury could be regarded as a self-created technique. However, all of his other techniques had been learned from other people. This was far too inferior. If he wanted to become a heavenly venerate, he would need to forge a unique path for himself. He would elevate the level of his Fists of Fury first. In fact, this was a technique that he had created while he was still at the Dividing Soul tier. Now, however, he was already at the Celestial King tier. Thus, he naturally needed to refine and improve it. However, could he refine and improve it just because he wanted to? He walked over to the fist technique section. There were countless secret techniques regarding fists here, and Ling Han greedily used his divine sense to absorb all of this information. However, he didn't practice these techniques. Instead, he simply consulted them and used them as references. He was going to take the advantages of each and then combine them with his own comprehension. Right now, he was simply absorbing this information. Brother Ding, are you going to the prospective partner ceremony? Chapter 25-22. Off to defend my wife. Prospective partner ceremony? Haha, Are you talking about that drinking party hosted by Xianing? When did it become a prospective partner ceremony? Oh, I heard the members of the Martial Academy say that this drinking party would be called a conference of cultivation, but in truth, it is a prospective partner ceremony. There is a mighty figure in the Martial Academy that thinks that everyone should not just be focused on cultivation, and should find some time to find a partner as well. That's true. We people are too excellent. Previously, we have concentrated fully on cultivation, and did not have the idle time to be concerned about any romantic affairs. By now, ordinary women would not be worthy of our notice at all, and probably only the empresses here would be worthy of us. Brother Ding, let me tell you, even Goddess Luan Xing would be going. What, Goddess Luan Xing is also going? Of course. Because of her, a few extraordinary beings would also appear at the same time, such as Gu Hai, Xiao Yingxiong, Miao Hua. Hiss, these monsters? The sound of the conversation between the two transmitted continuously, allowing Ling Han to grasp it. It could not be helped. The jade seal was a container, and whoever sent out a message through divine sense would be heard by others who had contact with the jade seal. Originally, this was meant to make it convenient for others to share ideas, and was not supposed to be used for idle conversation. A thought flashed across Ling Han's mind: the Empress would be attending the prospective partner ceremony. He could not believe the Empress would do such a thing even if it killed him. Even if he really had died, with how proud the Empress was, she would not deign to go, either. She was the type to have men kneel down and look up at her while she slowly made her choice. The Empress was probably kept in the dark. Her main reason for attending this drinking party was for the sake of discussing cultivation. Then he could only go and take a look for himself. Otherwise, what was he to do if someone snatched his wife? Those two people were just talking about the drinking party when the direction of their conversation naturally turned towards the beauties of the Martial Academy. Because the Martial Academy had existed for a number of epochs, even if there were slightly fewer female prodigies, after so many years, a great many female prodigies had also been accumulated, and there would naturally be exquisite beauties among them. An extremely small number of them advanced to become heavenly venerates, but the majority had only progressed until the 9th heaven celestial king tier. There were some among them that were still cultivating in the Martial Academy, and some that were traveling all around, looking for opportunities that would allow them to break through to that cultivation level which they yearned for. There was also a ranking of beauties in the Martial Academy that had listed the most beautiful women throughout the ages. In fact, there were even other time-differentiated ranking lists, with a range of 10 billion years. Actually, it was also the same for male prodigies. Only a rare few had become heavenly venerates, and the majority was still stagnating on the level of 9th heaven. The men also had rankings, but what was being considered was naturally not their looks, but rather strength. For example, in the latest ranking of strength, the one at the very top was not heaven-born, but rather Gu Hai, Xiao Yingxiong, and the others. They were already in the 6th heaven. To be accepted as students by the Martial Academy, they would have to be monarch tiers at least, and those that could be ranked in the upper echelons were even more likely to be monarch stars. In fact, they would have to be freaks with evolution index that reached 11 or 12. Gu Hai, Xiao Yingxiong, and Miao Hua were such freaks that even heaven-born had no choice but be ranked inferior to them. Of course, this was because they had suppression through their superior cultivation level, and in terms of a real battle of equals, it was definitely heaven-born that was stronger, or he would not have ranked so highly on the Eternal Stone. It should be known that the names of Xiao Yingxiong and the others were not ranked on it. It was also possible that they could not be bothered with this kind of ranking. Ling Han developed some understanding. All in all, the pressure on him now was very heavy. Even if there weren't 10,000 people that desired his wife, there had to be 8,000. Furthermore, they were all the super geniuses of the Martial Academy. Right, off to defend my wife, Ling Han thought as he continued to pluck the essence of various fist techniques. A day later he left the library, and returned to his accommodations, where he began to meld these fist techniques together. While his ability of deduction could not be compared to Wally's, it was definitely in the highest tier. With the time acceleration effects, boundless enlightenment rose up inside him. However, after 2 days had passed in real time, he had no choice but to stop. The drinking party was about to begin. He changed his clothes so he would appear more alert. However, he naturally would not be showing his real appearance. He was sure that the Empress, Hu Niu, and the others would still be able to recognize him, even if it had been 1,000,000 years since they parted. He looked again and again at the mirror, and when he felt he was handsome enough, he pushed open the doors and left. When the two people from before had conversed, Ling Han had also found out where this drinking party would be held. Thus, he headed there directly after he exited from his place. The drinking party was hosted by a person called Xian Ying. He was a veteran prodigy, and going by the time-different rankings of 100 million years, he was someone from the last 2 generations and had long since reached the 9th heaven celestial king tier. There were not many students that did not leave after attaining 9th heaven. That was because the majority would follow heavenly venerates to battle with hysteria outside the realm. Though they would only be minor characters, and it would be extremely dangerous, the possibility of gaining enlightenment in such extremely dangerous circumstances would also be slightly higher. It could be said that the majority of heavenly venerates had broken through in the realm battlefield. Actually, Xian Ying had also gone to the realm battlefield before, and had now come back for a rest. While he was at it, he had taken heed of the idea of some powerful figure in the martial academy, and decided to host a drinking party so he could get to know these little brothers and sisters, and fill them in on the cruelties of the realm battlefield. His abode was located midway on a peak. Though it was also in the martial academy, there really was a far distance. Even if Ling Han raced madly with all his might, he would only be able to arrive after probably 2 hours, at least. Tap, 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 a sound rang out from behind him. Ling Han was surprised. Though he was not running at full speed, his speed was already overwhelming, and someone actually managed to catch up to him. He turned his head, and saw that it was a carriage that was nearing him quickly, and it was actually being pulled by a dragon. Dragons were the strongest of immortal beasts. They were incredibly powerful creatures, and it was said that they could become celestial kings upon birth. With merely this fact alone, what other race could compare in this world? Hence, dragons were also extremely proud beings. Ling Han had never seen celestial-level dragons in the celestial realm before, because the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable had turned the ancestor dragon into a precious tool, while other dragons had basically perished in the war against the invasion of the foreign realm. Similarly, it was the same for the Phoenix race as well. The ancestor Phoenix had similarly died in the hands of the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable. This was his first time seeing a great celestial king-tier dragon, but it was actually playing the role of steed. This caused Ling Han some amount of surprise. Xiao, the dragon's sword, passed, and the carriage also passed him by. The body of the carriage was heavily covered with seals. Clearly, this was no ordinary item, either. Otherwise, how could it be able to sustain this kind of speed? It would have long since broken apart. Idiot, come on and chase me. A head stuck itself out of the carriage window, yelling at Ling Han in provocation. Originally, Ling Han would not have taken it to heart even if he had been surpassed. He would only muse ruefully how his first encounter with a great celestial king-tier dragon would actually be like this, yet he had not expected that he would be mocked even when he was just going his own way. The other party was a man, and he was very young. He laughed loudly, and when he said his piece, he sat back down in his carriage. The inner space in the carriage was very lavish, with thick carpets laid out on the floor. Aside from him, there was another purple-robed young man that was sipping wine. Seeing that he had withdrawn his head, this person held the stem of the wine cup gingerly, and asked calmly, "Young Master Zhua, is this really good? What's bad about it? A mere third heaven celestial king that does not even have a means of transport, what kind of important person could he be?" This man countered. His name was Xueqi, and he had a prestigious identity. His grandfather was a pseudo-heavenly venerate. Though it did have the attachment of the word pseudo, so he had not advanced into the invincible cultivation level, as long as there was the slightest link to heavenly venerable tier, could that not be awesome enough? Thus, Xueqi was naturally arrogant. The purple-robed young man was just about to speak when he spluttered out all the wine in his mouth with a sudden "Pu." Chapter 25-23. Sorting him out. What's wrong with you? Xueqi laughed loudly. For a great third heaven celestial king to actually look so embarrassing, this was really too funny. The purple-robed young man coughed continuously, and could not even speak. He merely pointed a finger behind Xueqi's back. Xueqi was curious, and turned his head. Instantly, he felt a chill rise up his spine as he almost called out in spite of himself. A face had suddenly appeared at the window of the carriage. Who else could it be but the person he had previously mocked? He had to be seeing things, The other party actually caught up to them so soundlessly. Was he planning to scare them to death? Moreover, the carriage was clearly still advancing at a rapid speed, yet this man could actually keep up with them. His speed was shockingly stable. Just what kind of monster was this? Country bumpkins scram! Xueqi shouted loudly, feeling a slight burst of anger at his own embarrassment. He had actually gotten a scare. In the Flaming Frost realm, there were actually a great many people that felt great prejudice towards outsiders, and thought that it was they that had snatched away too many opportunities that originally should have been theirs. This was a very great conflict. If it weren't for the fact that there were a considerable number of powerful figures suppressing this conflict, it would probably have long since resulted in the outburst of an intense civil war. Xueqi was a local, and had never liked outsiders. That was why he had deliberately shown himself and thrown out a mocking remark when he had previously passed by Ling Han. At first, he had thought that Ling Han would definitely be no match for him in terms of speed, since he had been surpassed by the carriage. Who would have thought that that was not Ling Han's full speed at all? Ling Han humphed and demanded, "Apologize." Actually, he was a very amicable person. If others did not trifle with him, he would not offend others of his own volition, either. But who asked Xueqi to be so wretched, and insist on provoking him? Then he would show the other what his temper was like. Get lost. Xueqi calmed himself, and immediately waved out an arm, sending out a gust of power. He, too, was a third heaven celestial king. This strike was extremely shocking, and had terrifying might. Ling Han shot out a casual punch. Boom! This gust of power was instantly and incredibly easily obliterated. What? The purple-robed young man also paled in shock. He had not thought that Ling Han's strength would be so great. Hurriedly, he moved as well, and delivered a palm strike, aimed straight for Ling Han's shoulder. Xiao, Ling Han's figure disappeared from the window in a flash. Xueqi and his companions sighed in relief. What kind of person was this? Why was his strength so terrifying? Thankfully, they had managed to throw him off their tail in the end. It was at this very moment that they felt the carriage shudder, and then they were both thrown into the air. What's going on? Pong! The carriage fell onto the ground, releasing a massive bang. At the same time, a powerful impact also ensued. After all, at such a great speed, the carriage suddenly overturning would naturally cause a frighteningly strong impact. Pong pong pong. Xueqi and his companion were violently shaken inside the carriage. Thankfully, they were celestial kings, after all. As they channeled their regulations respectively, they both floated in midair, a protective layer of light wrapped around them resisting the force of the impact. After the carriage had stopped completely, they also pushed open the door of the carriage and walked out. Immediately, they got a scare because the great dragon that was playing the role of their steed was already lying on the ground, its claws facing skywards. A large bump had also risen on its head. Clearly, someone had knocked it out cold. The culprit was Ling Han. They saw a man that was standing right next to the carriage. His arms were crossed behind his back, exuding the air of a show-off. How dare you? Xueqi roared in fury. You dare to attack even my steed? Are you tired of living? This was the pride of a local. They would always look down on outsiders. Ling Han couldn't help but feel surprised. Just how ignorant was this guy? Hadn't he learned enough of his lesson? He still dared to be so arrogant. Rubbing his chin, Ling Han said, "Has anyone ever told you that you are ignorant?" The purple-robed young man nodded internally. He had known Xueqi for some time, and naturally knew that the latter was a little ignorant. Usually he would make a lot of enemies, but in truth, it was all unnecessary. If it were not because Xueqi had an ancestor that was a pseudo-heavenly venerate, who knew how many times this brat would have been pummeled, and he might have long since died by now. Yet Xueqi did not have this kind of self-awareness at all. He was too proud. Because he had an ancestor that was a pseudo-heavenly venerate, he considered everyone else below his notice. He humphed. Kneel down and apologize, or I will make you want to wish for death. Ling Han chuckled. This kind of idiot was really ignorant. Merely conversing with him was practically a humiliation to his own intelligence. He directly moved, stretching out a large hand, and seal after seal formed. After he had replenished himself with the regulations of the Flaming Frost realm, his battle prowess had already soared directly into the fifth Heaven 1, which was practically on the same level as his body art. Furthermore, his body art was also limited by his own cultivation level. As long as he had not yet advanced into the 4th heaven, he would only be limited to this extent. However, with the different regulations, he was still just at the early stage of the 3rd heaven presently, and there was still space for improvement. Going by Ling Han's deductions, ultimately, his body art and power of regulation should be equal. The purple-robed young man and Xueqi both rose up to counter him. The former was a monarch tier, but Xueqi was only an emperor tier. The fact that he managed to enter into the martial academy was due to his ancestor, or there would be absolutely no possibility that he could appear here. That was the truth as well. It was his ancestor that had brought Xueqi through the 9 Deaths formation, and Xueqi had not gained the recognition of the martial academy. Thus, he did not have his own abode, nor did he have any cultivation resources issued by the martial academy. With his own power, he could not leave or enter. He was merely deceiving himself. What use would their counterattack be? The descent of Ling Han's hand was not obstructed at all. Peng, Xueqi and his companion both trembled at the same time as they involuntarily threw up blood madly, feeling an agony that could not be described. Only now did Xueqi and his companion know just what kind of hard rock they had crashed into, and they both couldn't help but turn pale. Ling Han stroked his chin. How should I deal with the two of you? There was a heavenly venerate standing guard here, so murder was definitely forbidden. There were some rules that had to be adhered to. And he'd do that, then. Once Ling Han was really angered, he naturally would not be appeased so easily. He broke into a grin, and picked up both the purple-robed young man and Xueqi at the same time. Then, with a burst of power, the clothing the two were wearing instantly turned into ash. Why what do you want to do? Both of them were stunned. Even if they were celestial kings, so what? They still broke out in a cold sweat in their terror. Ling Han's gaze was too evil, right? It couldn't be that he was the type of pervert that would be interested in raping men, right? Don't worry. My tastes are not that hardcore, Ling Han replied, laughing. Xueqi and his companion finally breathed a sigh of relief at this, but then they thought further. Hey, that's not right. If your tastes are not so hardcore, what are you taking our clothes off for? Ling Han first threw the purple-robed man onto the ground, then pushed Xueqi onto him. At this, both celestial kings looked livid. Ling Han chuckled, and tapped a finger on a specific spot on each of their bodies. Ah! Xueqi and his companions screamed at the same time, feeling as if their hearts had been ripped. Their agony could not be described, and even their bodies were twitching slightly. However, anyone who saw this scene would exclaim with an "oh" in understanding. Two men were doing something shameless, and were even shamelessly moaning and groaning in their lust. Ling Han was extremely satisfied. His skill in giving others a hard time seemed to have improved further. This was worth celebrating. He walked to the great dragon, and lightly patted the latter's head. A force reverberated out, and this great dragon was instantly awakened. When the great dragon regained consciousness, it couldn't help but be enraged upon spotting Ling Han. It was this guy that had blasted it to the ground. It knew that it was no match for Ling Han, and was about to complain to its master when it suddenly saw a scene that even it could not bear to witness. Oh, my poor draconic eyes! Chapter 25-24. Drinking Party. Your master is very busy, so it would be better for you to send me to the destination first. Ling Han laughed, and boarded the carriage. Though the great dragon had not taken human form, its intelligence was not the slightest bit low, so it naturally knew that Ling Han's strength had already surpassed its imagination. It made no move to resist, all obedient. With it releasing a dragon roar, its claws stepped onto air as it immediately sped forth like lightning. Ling Han lifted the curtain of the carriage window, and looked at the constantly changing scenery around him. He nodded internally. As expected, dragons were beings that were naturally born to rule the skies. The speed was truly astonishing. However, Ling Han looked closely at the few unique metal plates on the dragon's body. There were seals flickering and flashing light engraved on them. Instantly he understood. Dragons were indeed fast, but their speed had not reached an extent that would shock him. Instead, those few metal plates, which were definitely precious tools, boosted the speed of the great dragon, which allowed it to be so fast. This was almost the speed of a full-out sprint from Ling Han. After more than an hour, Xian Ying's abode was already within sight. It was no problem even if Ling Han had never come here before, because there were too many carriages that were stationed outside this abode. The steeds that pulled these carriages varied greatly, but they were all at the Celestial King tier. There were peacocks, pheasants, giants, and of course, there were also pure humans. As long as one had enough strength, even an ant could be mighty and paramount, and when faced with an even stronger being, even a human Celestial King would fall to the level of a steed. With this thought, it was nothing too strange for a great Celestial King tier dragon to play the part of a steed. The large dragon stopped, and withdrew its aura. Though it was a dragon, and a Celestial King tier 1 at that, it did not have the slightest feeling of superiority here. If it dared to be arrogant, any single person here could easily slay a dragon. Cautiously, it sprawled out on the ground. It had been a servant for so long that it had forgotten the pride of a Celestial King. Isn't this Xueqi's dragon carriage? This profligate young master is here as well. With his personality, he would definitely offend those few female Celestial Kings today, right? He would only be pummeled at most. After all, he has a pseudo-heavenly venerate ancestor, and anyone would have to give his ancestor some face. Lord Xuebing is a top-tier prodigy of our martial academy, and has also battled countless years in the realm battlefield, finally advancing to the ranks of pseudo-heavenly venerable tier. He is only but half a step away from true transcendence. This lord is so heroic and mighty, but why would he have such an unworthy descendant? If a great son could be born every generation, then wouldn't the Flaming Frost realm belong to the Xue clan by then? Many people recognized Xueqi's dragon carriage. Clearly, this guy was extremely showy in the martial academy. His person had not even arrived yet, but he had already caused spirited discussions to rise up among the masses. Of course, all this discussion was negative. Two young men walked out and approached. They were Xueqi's friends, and both of them had a pseudo-heavenly venerate ancestor in their clans. One was named Wu Ju, and the other was Su Shan. Kai, why are you so late? Come out and take a look at the beauties. The two men called out from outside the carriage. Ling Han opened the carriage door and came out, causing the two men to exclaim in surprise. Because they did not spot Xueqi, they couldn't help but ask, "Where is Kai?" It was not that they were curious why there was another person sitting in Xueqi's carriage, because Xueqi loved to show off would often befriend some prodigies so that he could boast everywhere in future. But where was Xueqi himself? Ling Han smiled and replied, "Xueqi found something fun on our way here, and told me to inform you guys on his behalf so you could hurry and play there." Both Wu Ju and Su Shan were surprised. They knew Xueqi liked to play, but with how high the standard of the drinking party was, all the prodigies in the last 10 billion years had been invited, yet Xueqi had actually found somewhere even more enjoyable. Wu Ju couldn't help but ask, "What is it?" Though he was also a Celestial King, he had been forcefully pulled up to this level by the incredible might of a great elite. In the future, there would be practically no further room for him to improve. Thus, having fun was his primary mission. Ling Han put on an air of mystery, and made a hushing gesture. Then, placing his hand next to his mouth, he whispered, "It is extremely fun. That's why Xueqi asked you guys to go over." Seeing how mysterious Ling Han was acting, Wu Ju and Su Shan could not hold themselves back any longer, and hurriedly asked, "Where is it?" Ling Han related the detailed location, causing the dragon next to him to bare its teeth involuntarily. Ling Han was clearly trying to cause trouble. If others witnessed how Xueqi was looking now, would he still have any face to see others in the future? Despicable. This was really too despicable. Yet the great dragon did not dare make a sound in the slightest. It pretended that it knew nothing. Having been on the receiving end of a punch from Ling Han, it was fully and completely intimidated. Wu Ju and the other man were both very intrigued. They knew very well what kind of person Xueqi was. If that other activity was not incredibly fun, how could he bear to miss out on this kind of excitement, but rather play around elsewhere? They immediately summoned a carriage, and shot out according to where Ling Han had told them to go. They feared that Xueqi would finish playing that fun thing, and nothing would be left for them. Ling Han chuckled, and jumped down from the carriage. Then, he walked towards the abode. He was only a third heaven celestial king. This kind of cultivation level was not very high. Furthermore, he had not shown his face much, so it was natural that no one knew how freakishly strong he was, and no one paid any special attention to him at all. After entering into the abode, he found himself in a completely different world. For a celestial king, creating a separate dimension was really too easy. Hence, this abode was also shockingly huge. The place they entered was a colossal plaza, and there were rows of tables set out in this plaza. Every row of tables was made up of over 100 separate tables joined together. White cloth was laid out on these tables, with meat dishes in one row, fruits in another, and the intervals were continuous. A great many people were walking around between the tables, taking some here and taking some there. It was just nice. Anyone could pick up some meat and fruit anywhere they liked, which was very convenient. As they roamed around, they ate and socialized with others. Then, there would be servants passing to and fro between them to pour wine, which had a kind of unique charm. Though there were already several hundred people here, Ling Han only had to sweep a glance over the gathered masses, and he could confirm that the empress, Hu Niu, and bewitching maiden Ro were not among them. Hence, he grabbed a plate, and roamed around himself. Very soon, he had accumulated a pile of food, and then walked to the side where he began to eat. There was no seating in the middle of the plaza, but there was all around. There were also tables available for them to place some things. However, there were not many people here, because this was a drinking party, which was meant as an opportunity for socializing. What do you mean by just eating at the side like this? Ling Han naturally would not be concerned. The food here was really quite good. Some meat jerky of great celestial king tier beasts was already delicious enough with just simple cooking, and if the skill of the chef was even better, it would be even more delectable. He was very engrossed in eating, and was completely unconcerned about the looks others were throwing at him. However, after wolfing down the food for some time, he still drew the attention of others. A young girl walked over, her arms crossed over her chest. Then bending down, she had practically shoved her face right in front of Ling Han. Why are you eating here all by yourself? Because I like it, Ling Han answered nonchalantly. The taste of the food here was really quite good. Who knew would like it? The young girl pouted. Glutton, she uttered disdainfully, then her keen interest returned once more, and she additionally asked, why are you not socializing with the others? Why should I? Ling Han countered. The young girl was surprised. Could it be that you don't know that this is a social gathering? Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. Then why don't you join them either? There's no one good to socialize with, she sighed, looking very regretful. Chapter 25-25. Knowing how to behave. Ling Han cracked a smile, pointed at himself and asked, what do you think about me then? You? The young girl sized him up, then nodded, and offered her judgment. You have only cultivated for less than 1 billion years, yet are already a third heaven celestial king. Not bad, quite good. However, you are not my cup of tea. She spread her hands, her expression saying, you're not my type at all. Ling Han naturally would not be offended. Though only over 1 million years had passed for him in real time, if the time passed under time acceleration effects was taken into account as well, there were still a few 100 million years at least. This young girl's judgment was quite accurate. He smiled slightly, and continued to eat. The young girl was now interested in him instead, and said, you are quite interesting yourself. I said that about you, but you are not angry at all. Just for the sake of your good temper, I have decided to do you a good deed. What is it? Do you want to save me from my poor bachelorhood? Ling Han asked laughingly. I have decided to introduce my big sister to you. Ling Han couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. This young girl was clearly the undependable type. Her big sister had to feel great pressure from having to deal with her antics. What are you frowning for? My big sister is very pretty, the young girl declared proudly. In the 100 Flowers scroll this time, my big sister is ranked 4th. There would always be people who were too idle, and would rank pretty women according to their respective beauty. There was an overall leaderboard. All female disciples of the Martial Academy would be encompassed within, but there were also secondary leaderboards aside from this overall leaderboard, and they were differentiated by 100 million years each. Clearly, the young girl was talking about a secondary leaderboard. Where there was the empress and who knew, her big sister could still claim fourth place. She should be very beautiful. Since she is so pretty, what need is there for you to be anxious? Ling Han asked, smiling. You don't understand, the young girl explained. Those damn men would definitely show their best side just to court my big sister. Even if it was just a pretense, they would have to act the part very well. I can't rest assured with that. Thus, I want to help big sister choose personally. You see, in front of me you did not act at all, right? Ling Han couldn't help but break into laughter. Though the young girl was using a strange logic was still logic. Big sister will be coming later too. I will make introductions, and I guarantee that you will drool when you see her, the young girl boasted. Ling Han deliberately said, Really? I have always had very discriminating judgment. Unless she is as beautiful as Xueqi, I would not be charmed easily. You, the young girl pointed at Ling Han. Why was this guy so shameless? Who was Xueqi? Not only was she the top place holder of the 100-flower scroll this time, even in the overall leaderboard, she would be considered one of the most beautiful too. The only person that could compete with her was Lin Yulian. But Lin Yulian had gone out on a training trip several epochs ago, and had never returned throughout all these years. Thus, Xueqi's position as the top beauty could not be shaken at all. And you call this as having discriminating judgment? You are actually just shameless, aren't you? Humph, as I see it, you have not seen Xueqi at all. You are merely going by exaggerated rumors, and can only imagine her supreme beauty in your mind. Let me tell you, if I don't tell you who's big sister, you will definitely think that she is more beautiful than Xueqi, the young girl exclaimed defiantly. Chen Ziyu, don't just randomly play matchmaker. A voice suddenly rang out, interrupting their conversation. Ling Han looked over. This was a very tall young man, with 4 streaks of peculiar light wrapped around him, an indescribable arrogance clear in his expression. Busybody, what do you care about what I do? The young girl humphed, crossing her arms over her chest. The young man showed a hint of displeasure. My name is Guan Dongyu. Don't be so fussy. It doesn't matter if there is a stroke less or a stroke more. The young girl, Chen Ziyu, spread out her hands. Guan Dongyu humphed. Celestial Maiden Xiao isn't your actual sister at all. What need is there for you to be concerned about her affairs? Busybody. You are really such a busybody. I want to concern myself, so what do you care? Chen Ziyu glared at him angrily. Damn girl, do you think that you can just do as you like because Celestial Maiden Xiao dotes on you? Guan Dongyu suddenly moved, grabbing out at Chen Ziyu. Ling Han shook his head. A man, and one who has an advantage in cultivation level, how can you bring yourself to bully a girl? He extended a hand as a block, and grabbed Guan Dongyu's wrist. Chen Ziyu was only a second heaven celestial king, and there was no way that she could block this blow from Guan Dongyu. Guan Dongyu couldn't help but feel surprised. A mere third heaven celestial king actually managed to block his attack? He humphed. You actually dare to interfere, he roared, his right hand suddenly exerting strength. Power of regulation blazed. He was going to crush Ling Han's hand. Yet his expression immediately changed drastically because his hand was actually completely motionless, and Ling Han was still holding it steadily with his own. A third heaven celestial king had got a hold of his hand, and he actually was unable to extract himself. This was too ridiculous. Could it be that the other had concealed his cultivation level? Impossible. Celestial kings could indeed conceal the peculiar light wrapped around themselves, but it would either have to be hiding it all, or leaving it completely exposed. There was no possible way that one could hide just 1 or 2 of those streaks of peculiar light and leave the others. Since Ling Han showed that he was wrapped by 3 streaks of peculiar light, that meant that he was a third heaven celestial king, genuine and completely truthful. Guan Dongyu's expression changed abruptly. There was only one possibility, then. Ling Han was a monarch star, or even more freakish than a monarch star, a monster whose evolution index reached 11 or even 12. I forfeit, Guan Dongyu said, knowing very well how he should behave in such a situation. If they really were to fight one another, not only would it not benefit him in the slightest, he would be embarrassed in full public as well. Ling Han nodded. Since the other knew how he should conduct himself, he thus released his grip. Guangdong immediately turned around and left, not even bothering to participate in the drinking party any longer. Wow, so you are actually so strong. Chen Ziyu's eyes lit up. Ling Han smiled and asked, have you fallen for me then? I already told you, you are not my type, Chen Ziyu said. Still, big sister likes your type, so your chances are greatly increased now. Ling Han was just about to say something when he saw a woman walk over with swaying hips. She looked very enchanting and graceful, with 2 streaks of peculiar light wrapped around her. She curtsied slightly towards Ling Han and said, Tan Shuang greets the senior brother. Ling Han nodded in reply to her greeting. Go away, you have no share of this man. Chen Ziyu quickly shooed her off. Clearly, this woman had only come here because she had witnessed the scene of Guangdong Yu being chased off. Why? The fact that a 3rd heaven had succeeded in forcing a 4th heaven into retreat represented supreme aptitude. Wasn't this kind of man an excellent husband material that could not be found without much difficulty? Senior brother. Senior brother. This senior brother. More women walked over, just like sharks that had scented blood. How could Chen Ziyu manage to block them off all by herself? Involuntarily, she couldn't help but shout in anger. Why had you guys ignored Ling Han completely just now then? Right at this moment, sounds of commotion were heard. Celestial Maiden Xiaoyun is here. Someone cried out. Big sister is here. Chen Ziyu looked like a weight had been lifted from her. She had absolute confidence that once Ling Han saw Yan Xiaoyun, he would definitely fall for her, and there was no need to worry that he would be hooked by some other witch. The masses surged, and a considerable number approached the doors. What man would not be interested in this exquisite beauty that was ranked 4th on the 100 Flowers scroll? This was a prospective partner ceremony, and those that attended it were naturally here to meet a prospective partner. Like the moon with a myriad of stars revolving around it, a beautiful woman walked out of the crowd, and there were many men tailing behind her, all trying to curry favor with her. Come, I'll introduce you to Big Sister, Chen Ziyu said. Chapter 25-26. My name is Li Si. Yan Qiuyun was like the moon surrounded by a myriad of stars. She was indeed extraordinarily beautiful, slightly more beautiful than even bewitching Maiden Row. She was shapely like a green lotus and beautiful beyond words. If she only had beauty as her strength, she would be nothing more than an adornment. However, she was also a prodigy of cultivation, having a strong presence. There were 5 streaks of peculiar light wrapped around her, and this was enough proof of how powerful she was. Chen Ziyu tugged on one of Ling Han's arms, dragging him with her as she forged onwards. The difficulty of trying to squeeze into the crowds was very high. All of them were celestial kings, and were exuding an intense presence. Once the gap in cultivation level was big, there was absolutely no possible way that they could barge in. Fortunately, Chen Ziyu was shouting as she walked, attracting Yan Qiuyun's attention. The latter deliberately stopped, and only then did realization dawn on everyone as they separated to allow Chen Ziyu to pass through. Big sister, I found a good husband for you. Chen Ziyu was panting slightly. Barging past this crowd of people was like she had fought a battle with a great many celestial kings, which tired her tremendously. When her words fell, a considerable number of people instantly glared furiously at her and Ling Han. Yan Qiuyun glanced at Ling Han and asked, "Oh, that's him?" Her expression was completely nonchalant, and she was all smiles. Chen Ziyu turned to take a look, and almost went mad in fury. That was because while she was grabbing one of Ling Han's hands, his other hand was still holding a plate, which he held close to his mouth, and he was still chowing down without a care. Just how long has it been since your last meal? Or is it that you are the reincarnation of someone who died from starvation in his last life? Chen Ziyu almost wanted to cry. She was working so hard here, but why did Ling Han not take the matter to heart at all when it was him that this concerned? How should you be addressed, friend? Yan Qiuyun asked with a slight smile. There was naturally no chance that she would fall for a 3rd heaven celestial king, but she thought that Ling Han could make a good pair with Chen Ziyu, so she naturally had to show some concern. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "My name is Li Si." Yan Qiuyun was very skilled in keeping her composure, but even she felt the urge to hit someone when she heard this answer. "Even if you are not willing to tell me your name, you don't have to hoax me like this?" "Right one?" "Oh, so it is friend Li Si." She nodded, and then said to Chen Ziyu, Ziyu, come here. I want to talk to you about something. It was a lie that she wanted to speak with Chen Ziyu. Actually, she just did not want Chen Ziyu to have further contact with Ling Han, and wanted to separate the two of them. Chen Ziyu gave an "oh," let go of Ling Han's hand and walked over. Yan Qiuyun smiled slightly, and walked onwards. Then she turned around and cast a look at Ling Han, her gaze slightly fierce, filled with warning. Naturally, she was indicating to Ling Han that he should not have any further inappropriate ideas about Chen Ziyu, or she would not be reserved to move against him. Ling Han naturally would not take it to heart. He merely smiled, and was just about to walk off when several malicious-looking men stood in his path and blocked him off. Don't have any ideas about Celestial King Qiuyun. You are not worthy at all. Otherwise, we would not mind teaching you how to behave. These people all voiced their opinions, their words harsh. Ling Han glanced at them. They were all third heaven celestial kings. He shook his head. With so many people courting her, why are you targeting just me? This proves that you guys are too weak, and you only dare to shout at me. Those celestial kings all sneered. That was nonsense. They were all just third heaven celestial kings. How could it be that they would dare to become hostile with fourth heaven celestial kings? You are right. These people all nodded. Ling Han mumbled, am I such a magnet for bullies? He suddenly moved. Pang pang pang. With just 3 punches and 2 kicks, those celestial kings were all thrown onto the ground. This was clearly a celestial king tier battle, yet still became a brawl among hooligans. There was no flash of power of regulation at all. All of his strikes were physical and incredibly coarse. But the battle had still been resolved so quickly. Yan Qiuyun and her entourage had not walked too far off, and when they heard the commotion, they all turned their heads. Then they saw the few celestial kings laid out on the ground as they moaned, while Ling Han clapped his hands as he walked back to the side of the plaza, and started eating again. This brat, a young man in blue robes, murmured lowly, raising a brow. There were 5 streaks of peculiar light wrapped around him, and his aura was extremely frightening. Very extraordinary. In a few breaths' time, he has defeated celestial kings that are his equal in cultivation level, and it is not just one at that. Is he a newly advanced monarch star? Another celestial king asked, smiling. He was dressed in a tight green suit, and though his words expressed how high his assessment of Ling Han was, his expression was completely serene. This was natural. Even if Ling Han was a third heaven monarch star, so what? The other man himself was a 5th heaven celestial king, and with a superior suppression of an advantage of 2 cultivation levels, the gap in strength was extremely wide. There were 9 heavens in the celestial king tier, and every single step forwards was as difficult as ascending the heavens. How could that just be empty words? Moreover, he was also a monarch tier at least, and was just inferior by an evolution stage as compared to monarch stars. Yan Qiuyun appeared slightly surprised. She had not expected that Ling Han would actually be this strong. Before this, the first impression that Ling Han made on her was really too poor. He looked absolutely laid back and completely undependable, yet now it was proven that he was in fact a monarch star, which naturally exceeded her expectations. Celestial Maiden Qiuyun, there is no need to be concerned about this kind of minor character. This way, please. The young celestial kings gathered by her said. Yan Qiuyun nodded. This was the world's paramount martial academy. To say nothing of monarch stars, there were even freaks whose evolution index reached 11 or 12. What need was there for her to pay special attention? Only Chen Ziyu realized that she had been tricked, and wanted to seek out Ling Han. Yet Yan Qiuyun had a firm grip on her, so she could only leave helplessly. Brother, you've been rebuffed, haven't you? When Ling Han returned back to his initial place, there were a number of young people who walked over. They comprised both men and women, and all of them were wearing expressions of mockery. Hee, that is Celestial Maiden Qiuyun. How could she be someone that you can ever hope to ascend to be her equal? That's right. Don't think that you can be so arrogant just because you are a monarch star. Merely now, monarch stars number in the thousands. You really aren't worth much, a beautiful woman said in a sour tone. She had previously tried to go up to Ling Han and strike up a conversation with him, but Ling Han had calmly rejected her. Thus, she was naturally displeased. Now that she had found an opportunity, how could she not take the chance to mock him? Ha ha ha. These people all laughed. They were no match for Ling Han, and there was no way that they could chase off a fourth heaven elite with their cultivation level of third heaven. Seeing Ling Han rebuffed now, this actually became the source of their amusement. Ling Han shook his head. What kind of people were these? Even if they were monarch tiers, they shouldn't still be so superficial, right? Yet he did not know that these people were all locals of Flaming Frost Realm. In the first place, they held a low opinion of outsiders. Men would feel jealousy, and women would feel resentment, and added together, their behavior was incredibly hideous. Ling Han waved a hand. Go further away. Don't exude a stench that would affect my meal. This guy. Those young men and women were all angered, but they were either third heaven or second heaven celestial kings. How could they be a match for Ling Han in a fight? Naturally, they did not dare to flip out on him. Haha, this drinking party is actually a prospective partner ceremony. We will just wait and see as you leave all by yourself in the end, someone mocked. That's right. If anyone actually falls for him, I will eat these tables. I'll eat the chairs. They deliberately spoke this way to increase the strength of their mockery. Right at this moment, a commotion arose once more at the doors. Luan Xing, Goddess Luan Xing is here. When these words fell, it was like everyone in the plaza had gone mad suddenly. They surged towards the doors, scrambling all over one another. Goddess Luan Xing. The eyes of those young men and women also lit up. Both men and women were susceptible to the Empress's charisma. Chapter 25-27. The Exquisite Empress. Ling Han's heart jolted as well. It had been too long since he had last seen his wife. Everyone here were celestial kings, but every single celestial king seemed to have gone mad as they scrambled all over one another, surging in the same direction. Previously, Yan Qiuyun had been like the moon with a myriad of stars revolving around her, but now her entourage had basically dispersed. Aside from Chen Ziyu, only the two celestial kings in blue robes and green robes were left, but their expressions also held hints of hesitation, as if they were wondering if they, too, should go with the rest of the crowd. Yan Qiuyun's expression looked slightly livid. She had always been proud of her beauty, thinking that no one else could compare to her in this world. Furthermore, in her dimension, her beauty had indeed reigned supreme over a whole era. But now that she was here, she actually could only rank fourth, and furthermore, this was only this term ranking of the 100-flower scroll. In the overall leaderboard, she was not able to enter into even the top 100. But in the Empress's case, not only was she top in this term ranking of the 100-flower scroll, she would be considered one of the most beautiful even in the overall leaderboard. With such a comparison, how could she not feel jealousy? The crowds were surging back inside because the Empress had already walked in. Her brilliance could not be concealed even if she was surrounded by the masses. Every single person looked like they were completely enchanted, intoxicated by the Empress's charisma. It should be known that these were all celestial kings. It would be wonderful if I could stand by the goddess's side. I just want to look at her from a close distance. If the goddess could just say a few words to me, even if I were to immediately die, it would still be worth it. Beside Ling Han, those young men and women murmured under their breaths. His wife's charisma was truly strong. Ling Han smiled slightly, and strode forwards, heading towards the Empress. Only the Empress was there, and there was no sign of Hunyo or bewitching Maiden Row. Hey, what are you forcing your way in for? There were people blocking his path, and Ling Han easily pushed them aside, but they were naturally displeased. They had only squeezed their way in so far after great difficulty. What are you doing now? Don't you know what first come, first served means? Ling Han naturally took no heed of them, and continued onwards. As his terrifying aura unfurled, there was no one that could stop him as they all stumbled aside. In such a manner, he was immediately standing out from the crowd. Yan Qiuyun saw this, and couldn't help but feel even more jealous. Though she did not have any feelings for Ling Han, he previously had just been one of her courters, yet now was overcoming all obstacles to curry favor with another woman. Furthermore, this woman was a great rival of hers at that, which made her extremely displeased. This shameless guy actually intends to really court Luan Xing? Chen Ziyu was also stunned, and felt that Ling Han was truly shameless. Furthermore, he had not just been making empty promises previously, but had really come for the sake of Xueqi. He, merely seeking his own humiliation. Those young men and women that had previously mocked Ling Han all sneered coldly. Who did not know that Xueqi was extremely proud, and she was completely unconcerned about even the advances of Xueqi, Xiao Yingxiong, Miao Hua, and other such freaks. If that were not the case, there would be no chance for others either. Who would dare covet the woman that those monsters had set their eyes on? Everyone that saw this scene shook their heads, laughing at Ling Han, who had no estimate of his own measure. So what if you are a monarch star? Though the majority of disciples in the world's paramount martial academy were monarch tiers, there really were quite a large number of monarch stars as well. There would be thousands of them with every term. With Ling Han's strength, it was like he was walking on a plateau, no one capable of blocking his way, and adding the empress, whose personality was one to look down on the rest of the world, her steps did not stop at all. Hence, the two of them very soon encountered each other. No more than 3 meters separated them as they faced one another. Everyone was internally lamenting in pity for Ling Han. The empress was too proud. Who dared to block her path? Even if the empress could not deal with him, when Xueqi and the others found out, they definitely would move personally and help the empress resolve the problem. Thus, if one offended Xueqi, Miao Hua, or the others, they would only be offending a single person, but if one offended the empress, that would mean offending all the freaks of this term at the same time. Only a fool would do something like that. One who was ignorant had no fear. This guy had to have just enrolled in the martial academy. The empress looked coldly at Ling Han, just about to say scram, when she suddenly started. She did not have the frightening sense of smell of Hunyeo, but having spent so much time with Ling Han, how could it be that she would be unable to recognize her own man, even if Ling Han's appearance had changed now? Ling Han cracked a grin. He knew that the empress had already recognized him. The empress took a step, and, Xiao, it was like she had become an arrow that shot towards Ling Han. The goddess has moved. The goddess is not just beautiful. She is a great monarch star, and has formed a perfect celestial seed. Her evolution index has probably already reached 11. Thus, though she is only in the middle stage of 3rd heaven, her battle prowess is as high as 5th heaven. If that were not the case, how could she possibly obtain the admiration of Xueqi and the others? Now that the empress has moved, what person of the same cultivation level could stop her? This guy's is going to be fuck. Pooh. Ah. A series of exclamations rang out as everyone dared not believe what they were seeing. Their mouths gaped widely, even their tongues lolling out in shock. What had they seen? The empress had not attacked with this pounce, but had rather leaped into Ling Han's arms. This! They had to have seen wrongly. Haha, how could it be possible that that haughty goddess would throw herself into the arms of a man? They rubbed their eyes again, yet gritted their teeth once more. Not only was the goddess still in the arms of that man even had an arm hooked around the goddess's slender waist, while his other hand was gently stroking the goddess's glossy hair. Pooh! Yan Qiuyun spluttered, coughing in spite of herself. Chen Ziyu was gaping widely. As she saw it, Ling Han was not even qualified to speak with the empress, yet now he actually had his arms around the goddess that everyone dreamed and yearned for. Gods, could it be that she was still dreaming? By the side of the plaza, those young men and women were all gaping in shock, feeling like they were in an illusion. Just moments ago, they had been mocking that Ling Han was trying to aim above his league, and actually wanted to court Yan Qiuyun. But in the end, the other had directly courted the goddess of the martial academy, who had surpassed Yan Qiuyun by who knew how many times over. They all felt their faces flush with heat, wanting nothing more than for a hole to open up on the ground so they could bury themselves inside. Holy fuck, what's going on here? Someone finally muttered. Could it be that this guy is expert in using enchantment techniques, and has bewitched the goddess? That must be it. Still, no matter what, when Xueqi and the others find out, this brat will be done for. He will definitely be done for. Everyone came back to their senses. It was one matter for Ling Han being able to embrace the beauty now, but how could Xueqi and the others just sit by and watch? To say nothing that this would be a group of infuriated freaks, even if only one of them moved, how could Ling Han be able to withstand their attacks? Sigh, the word lust was topped with a knife wunge. Yan Qiuyun also thought of this fact as well. Involuntarily, a hint of a smile curled up the corners of her lips. This time, this was really hitting two birds with one stone. Ling Han was going to be in trouble, but for the Empress to actually throw herself in the arms of a minor character, this naturally would cause her reputation to drop greatly. Goddess? More like psycho. Ling Han had no wish to turn himself into the focus of everyone's attention. Though it was inevitable now, he still pulled the Empress with him to the side of the plaza, beckoning to her to eat. The Empress couldn't help but laugh slightly. Her husband was truly a glutton. Seeing how the Empress was smiling so enchantingly, everyone was dazed. It had been so many years, but who had ever witnessed a smile appear on the Empress's face? Beautiful. Too beautiful. Breaking news. Breaking news. Two people rushed through the doors in great hurry. Extremely groundbreaking news. Xueqi is actually doing that with a man, completely naked, in the open and wild. They were Wu Ju and Su Shan. To their shock, they discovered that no one even gave them a second look, even though they had brought such exciting groundbreaking news. Chapter 25-28. Groundbreaking news. Strange, could it be that this kind of thing had become so ordinary and everyday, and that was why no one was curious or concerned about it anymore? Both Wu Ju and Su Shan were surprised. They recalled how they had excitedly rushed to the destination, yet in the end witnessed two completely naked men lying on top of each other, shouting loudly as they shook. Even their faces had turned green. Heavens, this was really too hardcore, wasn't it? They naturally hated Xueqi to death. It was one thing that he himself was a pervert, but he actually invited them to come and plague together. Don't lead us down the wrong path too. Hurriedly, they rushed back, intending to publicize Xueqi's scandalous actions. In addition, they also wanted to call Ling Han to accounting as well. He actually caused them to witness such a scene. Really, even their outlook on life was about to be distorted by the trauma. What? Xueqi is actually that kind of man? Finally, someone recovered some of their senses from their astonishment, and began to accept this other piece of groundbreaking news. Haha, Xueqi actually likes men? It is possible. This kind of spoiled young master has toyed with so many women that he's grown bored of them. Who knows, he really could want to try something new and refreshing. Don't say it in such a disgusting way. New and refreshing? I am about to throw up. I remember now. A few days ago, Xueqi clapped a hand on my shoulder. At that time, he must have been having some ideas about me. Congratulations to you, brother. Who knows? Maybe Xueqi will recruit you to join his harem after a few days. This damn freak. More and more people were talking about this. This was indeed a big piece of news, and a huge scandal as well. Who was Xuebing? He was a great pseudo-heavenly venerate, yet his descendant was actually toying with men. He could probably kill himself with the amount of blood he would throw up in his outrage. Really, someone asked Wu Ju and Su Shan for confirmation. Of course it's real. I even recorded it with a memory crystal, Wu Ju said as he retrieved a crystal. Activating it with his source power, the crystal immediately glowed, revealing a three-dimensional scene. Wah! Instantly, sounds of disgust rang out all around. Two naked men lying on top of each other, roaring endlessly as they moved. Was there any need to ponder further what the two of them were doing? The one on the offensive was Xueqi. That little wife is Wu Shi. Someone recognized the purple-robed young man. Of course, he presently was not wearing the purple robes. It is indeed Wu Shi. It can't be, right? Wu Shi is a monarch tier, at the very least, and I have met this person before. He is very normal. TSK, how could someone who has this kind of fetish tell you about it? If I had not seen it with my own eyes, I couldn't have believed it even if someone had told me about this. Everyone shook their heads. Wu Shi was considered a young man with good prospects. How could he do something like this? Wu Ju and Su Shan looked for a while, and soon found Ling Han. Even if their cultivation levels had been forcefully dragged to this level, they were still celestial kings, after all. It was too simple for them to find a single person in a crowd of people. They ran over, planning to have their revenge on Ling Han. He actually dared to trick them, and caused them to witness such a scene. Scram! Before they even opened their mouths to speak, the Empress shouted lightly, her tone filled with dominance. Wu Ju and Su Shan had not spotted the Empress previously, as Ling Han was really too despicable. It wasn't right until they were rebuked that they looked towards the Empress. Instantly, they were staring fixedly at her. Goddess! It was actually Goddess Luan Xing. They both stood there blankly, incapable of speech, and were at a loss of what to do. Hurriedly, they retreated again. Only when they had retreated to the side did realization dawn on them. Hold on, weren't they going to get revenge on Ling Han? What were they doing now? But thinking of how beautiful and noble the Empress was, they could not muster the courage to make a second approach. Ling Han looked at his wife, and couldn't help but smile. After advancing into the Celestial King tier, the Empress seemed even more noble and graceful, such that even he felt slightly incapable of handling her. As the duo ate, they talked about their experiences throughout the years. They were completely acting as if they were completely alone. Only each other existed in their eyes. Ling Han asked about Hu Niu and bewitching Maiden Ro. Hu Niu got the notice of a heavenly venerate, and was snatched to become his disciple, the Empress related, and could not help but smile. Ling Han wore a strange expression on his face. To gain the notice of a heavenly venerate who wished to take them as disciple, another person would be scrambling all over themselves for such good luck, but the Empress actually used the word snatched, which showed that the little girl had definitely been unwilling at the time. Only the little girl would act like that. Ling Han recalled how Hu Niu had previously been snatched back to the Rock Palace. Wasn't it all so against her will? This little girl had absolutely no concept of great opportunities. Everything to her was just done however she willed it. Ro is attempting to break through to the third heaven at present, the Empress continued. Ling Han nodded. Originally, bewitching Maiden Ro only had the aptitude of King tier, but with the use of Heavenly Dao Jade, she had forcefully filled the holes in her grasp of regulations and other such factors and became a monarch tier. Without much effort, she could reach the 5th heaven Celestial King tier, but her progress rate naturally could not compare to a monarch star's. What more when the Empress's present evolution index was definitely more than 10. It was not only bewitching Maiden Ro who had improved. Great Lyso had little terror. After this battle beast had come to the flaming frost realm, it was like it had suddenly been freed of its chains. Its progress rate was astonishingly quick. By now, it was already in the 5th heaven, and in terms of merely cultivation level, it was not inferior to Heavenborn in any way. This should be because the overall level of Flaming Frost Realm was higher, and had a very massive accommodating trait, which suddenly unsealed the rate of progression for Little Terror. It should be known that battle beasts were originally born for battle, so what was so strange about progressing quickly through the cultivation levels? Ling Han also related his own experiences, and the Empress couldn't help but feel heartache. She vowed that she would tear Heavenborn into pieces, and feed every single piece of him to the dogs. I have to be the one to avenge myself, Ling Han said seriously. He was determined to defeat Heavenborn. This was his next goal. This was just like how he had previously contended with Ji Wuming. This time, it was Heavenborn instead. Only a strong opponent could allow him to become even stronger. The two chatted for quite a long while, yet suddenly realized that an abrupt silence had fallen on the plaza. They raised their heads, and saw that everyone had turned their eyes towards the entrance. They looked over as well. A man dressed completely in black had appeared at the entrance, 6 streaks of peculiar light wrapped around him. His aura had taken solid form, unfurling like dark clouds, and causing a sense of fear to rise up in everyone's hearts. Xiao Yingxiong, the Empress murmured lowly. This man is very strong. It is rumored that he has surpassed Monarch Star, and his evolution index is as high as 11. So this was Xiao Yingxiong. Ling Han nodded internally. Xiao Yingxiong was a supreme Monarch Star of the 6th heaven Celestial King tier, and his battle prowess has definitely soared to 7th heaven, and was very possibly approaching the 8th heaven. Thus, even Heavenborn was no match for this kind of elite, though he would definitely not lose either. He knew why a sudden silence had fallen as well. That was because Xiao Yingxiong was presently courting the Empress, and this was something that everyone knew. Yet, at present, Ling Han was actually acting intimately with the Empress. Xiao Yingxiong's eyes swept over, and immediately discovered the Empress. A hint of a smile actually appeared on his initially aloof face, but when he spotted Ling Han, this smile immediately froze. He humphed, and strode towards where Ling Han and the Empress were. Here it is, here it is. There is definitely going to be a good show ahead. With Xiao Yingxiong moving, that guy would definitely be done for. Sigh, to actually dare covet the goddess without having enough strength. Isn't that just courting death? Quite a number of people whispered among themselves. The fact that Ling Han had embraced the empress had instantly turned him into a public enemy. Xiao Yingxiong stood firm, stopping around 3 meters away from Ling Han's table. Flicking a finger, he declared towards Ling Han, "Scram!" It was only one word, simple, direct and commanding. Chapter 25-29. Battle in 9 Deaths Formation. Ling Han had not even spoken when the empress stood up, her pretty face frozen over with ice. The one who should scram is you. In terms of dominance, the empress has never lost to anyone. Xiao Yingxiong looked towards the empress, and immediately revealed an intimate smile. Don't mess around. The empress was about to flip out, but Ling Han stood up and raised an arm to stop her, pulling the empress behind him. He chuckled. There is nothing much to say. Do you dare battle me in the 9 Deaths Formation? A battle in the 9 Deaths Formation. Everyone was stunned. Ling Han was truly bold if he dared to challenge even Xiao Yingxiong. However, this brat was no fool. The 9 Deaths Formation had a unique trait. When high-level celestial kings entered into a low-level formation, their cultivation level would be reduced to the corresponding level. For example, when everyone entered into the 3rd level of the 9 Deaths Formation, everyone's cultivation level would be suppressed to the 3rd heaven. Humph, why should I accept? Xiao Yingxiong asked coldly. Without enough strength, don't do something that would provoke me. Ling Han smiled calmly. In a battle of equals, I have never encountered someone that can match me. If you do not dare to take the challenge to battle me, just say so directly. This was a provocation. Everyone gasped. Ling Han was really daring to actually dare act so arrogantly. However, though battle was not forbidden in the martial academy, there were restrictions on cultivation level. The gap between the two sides could not be more than 2 levels, or an elite would appear and immediately call a halt to the battle. Thus, unless Ling Han foolishly agreed to battle with Xiao Yingxiong, it was absolutely impossible that Xiao Yingxiong would make a move on him. No wonder this guy was so confident. As it turned out, he had come prepared. Xiao Yingxiong glanced at the empress, his expression becoming increasingly dark, and he answered, "Fine, we will battle in the 9 Deaths Formation." He led the way and walked out of the abode. Ling Han smiled, and also set out as well. Meanwhile, the empress was definitely following closely behind. Now that the trio had left, a commotion immediately arose as everyone surged outside. When the majority had left, Xianing came at a late moment. He looked at the scattered few that were here, and couldn't help but feel surprised. That was because he had come at this moment after much consideration, and thought that this moment should be right in the middle of things. Why were there still just a few people here? Ling Han, Xiao Yingxiong, and the others soon arrived at the entrance of the martial academy. The 9 Deaths Formation was located ahead of them. Which level do we choose? Xiao Yingxiong asked solemnly. The 2nd? Ling Han suggested. His body art would not be suppressed by the formation, so the greater the suppression of cultivation level, the better it was for him. For example, in the 1st heaven, he would be able to crush Xiao Yingxiong into the dirt with just a single finger. Of course, it was actually fine even if they entered into the 3rd level of the 9 Deaths Formation. His body art was too strong, and there was an extremely great chance of victory even against a 3rd Heaven Supreme Monarch star. However, he would not be able to easily suppress his opponent. Xiao Yingxiong didn't even bother to say anything, and directly entered into the formation through the 1st stone tablet. Ling Han grinned, and walked into the 9 Deaths Formation as well. Now that they are both in the 2nd heaven, the outcome of the battle would depend on whoever is stronger in a battle at the same tier. Whoever has the higher evolution index would have more of an upper hand. Then, it is needless to say that it would definitely have to be Xiao Yingxiong. His evolution index is as high as 11, and in this term of disciples, the only one that can suppress him is Hua Ferong. There is also Heavenborn. He is a monster. Everyone discussed spiritedly. They still had a higher opinion of Xiao Yingxiong. Even if his cultivation level was suppressed, A person with a higher cultivation level would definitely have some kind of advantage. This was something that could not be changed. Right at this moment, two imposing-looking men appeared at practically the same time, falling by either side of the empress. Guhai. Miao Hua. These were the two other super freaks, whose evolution index was rumored to have reached 11. Furthermore, in cultivation level, they have also reached 6th heaven, and possessed incomparable battle prowess. What's going on? Guhai asked. He was a completely different type from Xiao Yingxiong. He was wearing an amicable smile, and appeared very approachable. Lord Gu, Xiao Yingxiong is presently battling in the 9 Deaths formation, someone answered. Oh, with whom? Guhai was slightly surprised. Both he and Miao Hua were here, so who else would be worthy of a battle with Xiao Yingxiong? Li Si. Pooh. Guhai's and Miao Hua's expression became strange. Are you joking around with us? His name is indeed Li Si. More people nodded. At least, this was something that Ling Han had personally admitted. There is also a Zhang San here. Someone suddenly pointed at the first stone tablet. The name Zhang San was distinctly written at the 8th place on the stone tablet. Zhang San, Li Si. They're probably the same person. Hiss. Though this person is named on the Eternal Stone, it has already been 7,000 years since his last appearance. Everyone surmises that it is possible that he used a forbidden technique to make it this far, which left extremely severe injuries on him, and that is why he has not appeared all this while. Could it be that he has recovered? If he used the forbidden technique again, it is possible that Xiao Yingxiong would really be outmatched. See, he had made it to 8th place through using a forbidden technique, and this was something that Xiao Yingxiong could not compare with. Now, if Ling Han used the same trick again, could Xiao Yingxiong win in a battle at the same tier? It's impossible, right? Both Gu Hai and Miao Hua were both feeling curious. Why would Xiao Yingxiong suddenly battle with this man? They made some queries, and couldn't help but look dark at the same time. He deserved it. If it was them, they would also move without the slightest hesitation. Fuck, he actually dared to make a move on their goddess. Hopefully, Xiao Yingxiong would teach this brat a harsh lesson, Gu Hai said. He truly is a foolish guy, Miao Hua also declared coldly. Someone's come out. A figure flickered behind the first stone tablet. He definitely could not have barged through the whole 9 Deaths formation, as he had appeared so quickly. Instead, he had to have returned on the way he had entered. Who was it? Everyone stood on their toes to see, and all immediately looked stunned. Ling Han, it was Ling Han. Hiss, just how long had passed, and he had already defeated Xiao Yingxiong. Even Gu Hai and Miao Hua were extremely stunned, their expressions becoming incredibly serious. Though they were both very proud of themselves, and thought that they were stronger than Xiao Yingxiong in a battle of equals, their superiority was still limited. No matter what, the battle would only be decided after a few days, at the very least. Furthermore, the gap between victory and defeat would definitely be negligible. Yet just how long had passed by now? Ling Han had already walked out. Just what kind of crushing upper hand did he have? Could it be that this guy's evolution index had reached 12? Stop right there. Xiao Yingxiong also appeared. However, when he ran out, everyone couldn't help but laugh out loud. That was because this guy was looking too tragic, his face completely swollen and battered. He did not have the slightest air of aloof pride that he had had previously now. At first, everyone was still hoping that Ling Han had not fought with Xiao Yingxiong at all. Instead, he would have just gone in, roamed for a while, and then come back out again. But looking at how Xiao Yingxiong looked now, who would have any more doubt? Hiss, Ling Han was too strong, wasn't he? In a battle of equals, he could actually be as strong as this? This was absolutely one-sided. Ling Han turned his head, and asked smilingly, "What is it? Haven't had enough of being beaten?" Xiao Yingxiong's whole body was trembling in fury. "You cheated. Your cultivation level is definitely higher than 2nd heaven." Ling Han laughed. "There's something wrong with what you are saying. Even if my cultivation level surpasses the 2nd heaven, my cultivation level would still have been suppressed to the level of the 2nd heaven. Inside the 9 Deaths formation, everyone's cultivation level would be equal. Xiao Yingxiong was instantly rendered speechless. However, he kept feeling like there was something off. Ling Han was too strong, and his strength was completely illogical. Or should we go in and fight again? Ling Han suggested with a smile. Chapter 25-30. Forced to retreat. Fight your sister. Xiao Yingxiong almost cursed it out loud. Previously, though he had defended himself with his full effort, it had not caused even the slightest ripple. He had still been beaten terribly. Another fight. We will enter into the third level of the Great Formation and battle again. Xiao Yingxiong declared darkly. He was not willing to take advantage of Ling Han, either, because Ling Han was precisely in the third heaven. All right, Ling Han agreed decisively. They entered into the formation once more, and then immediately began another great battle. This time, Xiao Yingxiong clearly had a better fighting chance. That was because the third heaven was indeed Ling Han's true cultivation level, and he no longer had the advantage of suppression on cultivation levels. However, merely in terms of regulations, Ling Han could match Xiao Yingxiong, and in terms of body art he was slightly superior. With these two factors combined, it was equivalent to having two Ling Hans joining forces to fight Xiao Yingxiong. Was this something that Xiao Yingxiong could match? In only a few hundred moves, he was defeated once more. His face that had originally been swollen had now become even more unbearable to see. Someone has come out. Is it still Li Si? Outside, everyone could see a figure flash by, and reacted with shouts. It was Ling Han. Everyone felt a ruefulness that came out from having their expectations fulfilled. This guy had won again. Xiao Yingxiong also came out in quick succession, and the sorry way he looked now elicited involuntary laughter. His expression was dark, the fighting spirit in his eyes burning brightly. After two battles, he naturally realized that aside from the power of regulation, Ling Han still had body art, and the latter would not be suppressed by the Nine Deaths formation. However, because Ling Han himself was a third heaven, his body art also had an upper limit. If he made a move now, he would be able to suppress Ling Han easily. However, firstly, the martial academy had its rules, and secondly, even if he defeated Ling Han by using his superior cultivation level to suppress him, that would be an unjust battle. What was the point of it then? Enter into the fourth level of the Great Formation to battle again. Xiao Yingxiong could not bring himself to say this. That would be equivalent to admitting that he was no match for Ling Han in a battle of equal tier. He looked meaningfully at Ling Han. If Ling Han's body art could improve alongside his cultivation level, it would be eternally impossible that he would be able to match Ling Han in a battle of equal tier. But if that was not the case, it would naturally be a different story. Humph. He left with a flutter of his sleeves. His pride caused him to choose the option of fighting Ling Han again when the latter had progressed further. This junior brother, what is the point of putting on a pretense? Tell us your real name. Gu Hui said to Ling Han. His face wore an amicable smile, as if he would never get angry. A true man never changes his name, regardless of the situation. My name is Li Si, Ling Han declared smilingly. Finally, Gu Hui showed a hint of displeasure. Though he has always been amicable, it did not mean that he had less pride than any other person. On the contrary, this kind of display of humility was only a way to show how proud he was. Miao Hua also looked furious. Do you think that just because we are 3 cultivation levels higher than you, we cannot deal with you? If you're not happy about it, I'll see you in the third level of the Great Formation. In a fair battle, I will suppress every single person who comes to meet me, Ling Han declared, returning a tit-for-tat reply. Do you guys dare? Both Gu Hai and Miao Hua frowned slightly. Their battle prowess was on equal level with that of Xiao Yingxiong. Even if they were confident that they were stronger than the latter, it would not be too big of a difference. However, Ling Han had not taken too much time to defeat Xiao Yingxiong. Clearly, he had a crushing advantage in terms of strength. If they battled rashly, it would indeed be unwise. They decided to first pay a visit to Xiao Yingxiong. The latter had battled twice with Ling Han, so he should have gained some intel on Ling Han. The two of them did not speak, but rather turned and left at the same time. Awesome, a third Heaven Celestial King actually forced 6 Heaven Celestial Kings to retreat, and these two were 2 of the top 3 on the battle prowess board of this term at that. Everyone was very excited. After today, another new prodigy would emerge in the martial academy. The level of his freakishness surpassed the extent of Gu Hai and Miao Hua. He should probably be comparable to Heavenborn, right? They all returned to Xianying's abode, and continued the prospective partner ceremony. However, after the previous major events, everyone's interest had greatly declined. Bastard! A furious roar rang out as Xueqi shot out like an arrow. He looked here and there, his eyes practically spitting fire in his fury. This was a great humiliation. He had actually had his clothes torn off, and lay on top of a man who was completely naked as well. Furthermore, they had been moving and rubbing against each other at that. Just the mere thought of it caused a feeling of incredible disgust to rise up in him. More importantly, this scene had even been witnessed by his pals. He knew what kind of personality these two people had. They would definitely broadcast it everywhere. Thus, his scandal would definitely be known to everyone by now. He hated Ling Han, who was the culprit behind all this, to death. You! He soon discovered Ling Han, and immediately shouted loudly, "I want you to die!" The Empress was furious, and pointed at Xueqi menacingly. You lowly wretch should die 10,000 times over. Only now did Xueqi see the Empress, and involuntarily withdrew his aura. The Empress's presence was so strong that he could not even raise his head. However, his fury was too strong. Very soon, he returned to a state of rage as he promised, "Whoever can kill him for me, I will give them 100 million star stone." Everyone only acted as if they had not heard anything. As disciples of the Martial Academy, as well as Celestial King tier Monarch tiers and Monarch stars, who would care about 100 million star stones? Xueqi also knew that this was the wrong place to show off his wealth. These people were not his lackeys who would scramble to do his bidding if he only gave them some star stones. He thought for a moment, then took out a jade box, and said, "This is a crimson bright fire pill, which can greatly increase the cultivation level of 5th Heaven Celestial Kings and below. It can save 10 billion years of hard cultivation at least. Whoever kills that man, this crimson bright fire pill will belong to them." Instantly, a great many people looked tempted. Having the ability to save them 10 billion years of hard cultivation was extremely astonishing. Who wouldn't be tempted? But the problem here was, firstly, that no one dared commit murder in the Martial Academy, and secondly, just how many people would be able to match Ling Han. Thus, though everyone felt very tempted, there was still no one who stepped out. Xueqi was stunned. He was not an idiot, after all. Upon deeper thought, he knew what he had done wrongly. He declared, "Whoever gives him a good thrashing, this crimson bright fire pill can be bestowed on them too." Cease the nonsense. A cold humph rang out, and Xianying spoke. He was a 9th Heaven Celestial King, but there was actually someone causing chaos in his abode. What would that make him then? Xueqi raised his head and glanced at him. Then, clasping his hands, he said, "Greetings, Lord Xian." He did not show too much respect, because his great-grandfather was a pseudo-heavenly venerate. Even though he had only just taken a single step further than a 9th Heaven Celestial King, the distance that this step breached was astonishingly wide. "Lord Xian, could you give me some face?" he asked. The others almost burst into laughter. A mere 3rd Heaven Celestial King actually dared to ask a 9th Heaven Celestial King to give him face. He really had no sense of self-awareness. Only a profligate young master like Xueqi could do something like that. Even Xianying couldn't help but laugh. Shaking his head, he said, "To think that Senior Xue actually has a descendant like you. Who knows if there would come a day when you would bring shame to his name." He waved a hand dismissively. "Go on." Boom, a great power surged out, and Xueqi involuntarily retreated continuously, finally stopping only when he had retreated out of the abode. He glared angrily at the great doors, but did not enter again. Since a ninth heaven celestial king had spoken and moved, if Xueqi still did not know what was good for him, it would only be seeking his own suffering. However, he was definitely not going to let this go. He turned around furiously and strode off. Ling Han immediately whispered into the Empress's ear, "I'll be back in a while." Since Xueqi actually had such a precious item like the Crimson Bright Fire Pill, he definitely could not allow the former to just leave like this. Chapter 25-31. Messing around again. Ling Han ran out and sensed for Xueqi's aura. Then, he immediately flew out. Though this was the Martial Academy, it was really too huge. One would not be able to see a structure or a few passers-by once every short distance. No, there were only 2 to 3 abodes constructed on a single peak at most here, and passers-by were incredibly few and far between. The great dragon carriage had naturally been taken by Xueqi. Thus, he was traveling very quickly, but Ling Han's speed was even faster. As he traveled rapidly, not too long later, he saw that great dragon pulling the carriage behind it and galloping swiftly ahead of him. Ling Han channeled the regulations of space, and in a few bursts of teleportation, he rapidly closed the distance between them. The great dragon was still a celestial king, for better or worse. Immediately, it sensed that something was off. It turned its head, and discovered that Ling Han was actually approaching aggressively. Involuntarily, it couldn't help but shudder, and its 4 legs became weak. It hurriedly stopped, trembling in fear. It had developed a healthy fear of Ling Han from being beaten. Furthermore, it had witnessed how hardcore Ling Han's tastes were. What if he pushed the dragon together with some tiger or male bear as well? Then, how would it be able to face others in future? "My lord." This dragon sent out a message through divine sense, trying its best to curry favor with Ling Han. Ling Han felt disdain. His impression of dragons was that they should be noble and proud, soaring above the 9 heavens. How could they possibly be so materialistic? "Why have we stopped?" Xueqi opened the door of the carriage and walked out. When he discovered that the great dragon was actually playing dead and not moving at all, he was instantly angered, but when he spied Ling Han out of the corner of his eye, he couldn't help but shake, and showed an expression that contained both fury and fear. He naturally held a deep hatred for Ling Han, who had caused him to become the butt of everyone's jokes. However, at the same time, he was also afraid of Ling Han. Underneath absolutely crushing strength, he feared that he would be messed around with horribly again. "Young Master Xue, what is it?" Another person walked out. Who else could it be but that purple-robed young man, Wu Shi? He, too, spotted Ling Han, and his expression involuntarily turned livid. He recalled that matter of the past that he could not bear to look back on. He wanted nothing more than to dig a hole to bury himself in. At the same time, he also longed to rush forth and kill Ling Han. But in the end, he shut his mouth and did not say a word. Ling Han cracked a grin. "I think that the Crimson Bright Fire Pill is not too bad. Could you bear to part with it and gift it to me?" Xueqi almost cursed loudly. The reason he had taken out this alchemical pill was so he could find someone to deal with Ling Han. If Ling Han snatched it from him, what had he done then? Pleasing his enemy with a gift. He could not be a fool like that. "If I refuse, could it be that you will snatch it from me?" Xueqi exclaimed harshly, but it was clearly just putting on a tough act. Ling Han shook his head. No. I would have only picked up an alchemical pill from the ground, and definitely would not have stolen it from anyone. You can't frame me, or I will beat you up every time I see you." Xueqi was confused. Could anyone pick up a Crimson Bright Fire Pill from the ground? He had barely finished the thought when he felt his vision blue. Pang! A fist had already struck him, and then? Pang! The clothes that he was wearing once again exploded into bits after a series of heavy punches. His spatial god tool had also been beaten till it burst, and that Crimson Bright Fire Pill naturally fell onto the ground. Only now did Xueqi know what Ling Han meant with his earlier words. He couldn't help but explode in fury. Ling Han had really gone too far. He would definitely complain to his great-grandfather, and ask his ancestor to step out and suppress this evil villain. Then, it finally sank into him to cover himself, and he hurriedly covered his lower half. Ling Han shook his head. Looks like you haven't given up on your malice. You should get another treatment. He looked towards Wu Shi. What was your name again? Wu Shi made no reply, but merely kept his guard up. Hee, don't be nervous. You can be the husband this time. Ling Han moved, and grabbed out at Wu Shi. Though Wu Shi resisted with all his might, how could he possibly manage to defend himself? He was easily captured by Ling Han, and with a surge of power, he too, once again became naked. No! The two men were both shaking their behinds, releasing anguished wails. Ling Han chuckled. He first threw Xueqi onto the carriage, and then threw Wu Shi in as well so that the two of them were laid out on top of one another. Then, playing the same trick, he tapped a specific point on each of them, causing them to roar in pain as they began to twist their bodies rhythmically. Instantly, the carriage began to sway. Ling Han even closed the carriage doors very nicely. The great dragon was spying on Ling Han quietly, and when it saw how Ling Han's eyes turned on it, it hurriedly turned back round in fear. Stay here obediently, or I will slaughter you next time and make you into a stew, Ling Han threatened. The great dragon hurriedly nodded. It could tell by how Ling Han's eyes were shining, and by a glint of drool at the corner of Ling Han's lips, that this was a glutton that could not be more obvious. This was not just an empty threat. Ling Han picked up the crimson bright fire pill, then turned and left. When the drinking party was over, everyone would also see the carriage *X. He returned to Xianying's abode, and sat together with the empress. At this time, Xianying just happened to be talking about matters of the Great Realm War, which soon captured Ling Han's attention. This was different from what he had imagined. Hysteria had taken the form of a dimension. Thus what it had launched was a realm war. Its main power was focused on suppressing the flaming frost realm, but it was too strong. A single thought could create innumerable elites. Thus, all the elites were actually battling with a divine sense of hysteria. The strength of hysteria had already surpassed the range of a 7th-tier heavenly venerate. It was a genuine overlord of a dimension. Furthermore, it had devoured a considerable number of other dimensions, and merely 3 of them had already been transcendent dimensions. It was really too strong. Ling Han himself had once been the overlord of a realm, and clearly remembered how he only had to have a thought, and he could form any kind of being he wished at the Tami as long as their overall power did not surpass the maximum limits of the realm. Hysteria was naturally capable of this as well. Furthermore, it was even stronger. There were many that had reached the level of a 6th-tier heavenly venerate among the elites it had mobilized. More importantly, it was a dimension itself, so its power was endless. It was fine no matter how many 6th-tier heavenly venerates died, as it could mobilize endless numbers of them. Of course, aside from 6th-tier heavenly venerates, there were also 5th-tier and 4th-tier heavenly venerates. In fact, there were also 9th heaven celestial kings, and they formed a great army. Their main priority was to attack their defense lines, and start a massacre after entering into Flaming Frost Realm. The strength of a dimension greatly depended on the beings of this dimension. If the Flaming Frost Realm was massacred, hysteria would be able to easily devour this dimension. The realm battlefield was extremely dangerous, and the slightest wrong move could result in death. However, at the same time, it was also filled with opportunities because as long as one could manage to kill hysteria's creations, they could obtain benefits from the corpses left behind, which would stimulate the boost of one's cultivation level, and even help him to break through to the heavenly venerable tier. This was also why a great many 9th heaven celestial kings would go to the realm battlefield. Of course, the number of celestial kings that had died in battle was also shockingly high, but for that sliver of hope, even more 9th heaven celestial kings ventured there one after another. Ling Han anticipated venturing there greatly, but that place was the most dangerous place that only 9th heaven celestial kings would be worthy of setting foot in. If he went there now, it would completely be an act of suicide. He had best wait for a while longer. Ling Han suppressed his impulsive urge. Subsequently, Xianying took charge of the drinking party, and encouraged them to socialize among themselves, and see if they could encounter someone they liked. Let's go. The Empress tugged on Ling Han's hand, and the 2 people left the abode. They then went to the Empress's accommodations. Bewitching Maiden Row was not here. She had her own abode, and was presently in a state of seclusion, attempting to break through to the 3rd heaven. Thus, Ling Han had no plans to disturb her. And in Hu Nyo's case, she had already left the martial academy, and she probably would not be returning anytime soon. That is a fourth-tier heavenly venerate, and his title is Earnest Meditation, the Empress informed him. Ling Han nodded. He took out the crimson bright fire pill. I want to study this alchemical pill, and if I could trace its composition through analysis. Oh right, where's Wally? Chapter 25-32. Discussion. Wally had also gone to the Flaming Frost Realm with Zhou Hang, and Ling Han found this out from the message that Hu Niu, the Rain Emperor, and the others had left behind. The Empress spread out her hands, indicating that she did not know. With how proud she was, how could it be that she would concern herself with knowing the whereabouts of others? Ling Han was speechless. This was definitely his wife, as true as she could be. He studied the crimson bright fire pill himself. If he could concoct it, it would be too helpful to their group. A day passed, and quite a lot of interesting topics emerged immediately in the martial academy. For example, a powerful man named Li Si thrashed Xiao Yingxiong madly in the 9 Deaths formation, and it was done twice at that. Or for example, how Goddess Luan Xing was suddenly courted, and this guy that was so lucky that he had drawn the jealousy of countless people, with countless people cursing him with straw dolls, was still that Li Si. Another example was how it was unknown why the trend of homosexuality had suddenly arisen in the martial academy, and the first pair to come out of the closet was actually the young master of the Zhuo clan and Wu Shi. What was even more ridiculous, these two people were actually caught having S*X out in the open. And even more ridiculous was that the two of them had not actually done this once. They had just been exposed, and in the blink of an eye, they were again caught having S*X in the carriage. It was one thing for you to have carriage S*X in your own abode, but the carriage was actually parked by the roadside. Everyone who passed by could see the rhythmical shaking of the carriage, as well as hear those bursts of moans. Shameless. Too shameless. Of course, Xueqi's matter was just a joke, but this kind of gossip had the greatest potential of spreading. In just a single day, this news had spread throughout the entire martial academy, and who knew if it would spread to Xuebing, who was still far in the realm battlefield. Who knew if this news would directly kill the old geezer with fury? Ling Han just happened to be working hard on studying the crimson bright fire pill, but the Empress called him over merely a day later. There was a guy, a dog who had come to pay him a visit. The large black dog sat in the great hall like a human being, his paw holding a teacup, looking deep and putting on pretense of mystery. Little Han, come help Grandpa Dog massage my leg. The large black dog did not even have to turn around. He was a 9th heaven celestial king, so his divine sense was naturally strong. Ling Han was surprised. How did you recognize me? He had cultivated the heaven-deceiving technique, and even Heavenborn had not discovered anything strange about him. Tisk. The large black dog's expression was filled with disdain. Don't I know you well enough? The moment I heard about Xueqi's matter yesterday, Grandpa Dog immediately figured out that someone had messed around with this unlucky boy. Aside from me, I believe that only you who have gained my true inheritance would think of such a way to mess around with someone, little bastard. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. This large black dog himself was the ancestor of messing around with people. His recognizing others was actually through recognizing their way of messing around. It's great that you are here. In the future, when I mess around with anyone, you can help cover for me, he said laughingly. No problem. The large black dog patted his chest, looking very loyal. Ling Han said calmly, I heard that the ancestor of the Zhuo clan is a pseudo-heavenly venerate. Grandpa Dog suddenly feels a bit of a stomachache. I seem to have eaten some expired beef skewers yesterday. I'm going to find that guy and get revenge. He actually dared to sell this kind of things to Grandpa Dog. The large black dog immediately slid down onto the ground, and then looked like he was about to run outside. This damn dog, he really was the type to bully the weak, but tremble before the strong. There was no cure for him. Ling Han hurriedly stopped him. Can't you have a bit of backbone in you? Hey, what is backbone worth? Is it edible? The large black dog was completely shameless, but then again, it had never felt ashamed, either. Ling Han sighed. Xuebing is in the realm battlefield, and there is no way he can return in the short term. Why does Grandpa Dog's stomach not hurt all of a sudden? The large black dog rubbed his belly. As expected of Grandpa Dog, a ninth heaven celestial king. In the future, I am a being destined to become a heavenly venerate. My physique is really good. Ling Han gave him the middle finger, and then said seriously, the Tower of Three Realms has now fallen into Heavenborn's hands. We have to think of some way to get it back. This was the last inheritance from the karmic life heavenly venerable, and definitely could not be allowed to fall into the hands of another. The large black dog also became serious, and said, though I can suppress that brat, firstly, the Martial Academy has its rules, so it would not be appropriate for me to move publicly. Secondly, that brat is a manifestation of divine metal. Even Grandpa Dog cannot penetrate his defense. If we wanted to forcefully snatch back the Tower of Three Realms, it would be difficult. Ling Han also knew this. He slowly nodded, and then said, however, Heavenborn must definitely be dealt with. Furthermore, I have battled with him on the celestial path. At the last crucial moment, it was the lingering intent of the karmic life heavenly venerable that appeared and distracted him, which allowed us to successfully escape. Lord Yuan Shang. The large black dog was instantly excited. Let's go. Grandpa Dog will immediately go and slaughter that brat, and save Lord Yuan Shang. Seeing how excited it was, Ling Han nodded internally. At least on the issue of the karmic life heavenly venerable, the large black dog was still extremely loyal, and did not shame its virtue as a dog. Woof, your beady eyes are blinking like mad. Are you cursing Grandpa Dog inside your head? The large black dog was extremely sensitive. Ling Han put on a serious face. I was complimenting you. Then he pondered slightly. Heavenborn is the manifestation of the celestial realm, and it can be said that there is no way that anyone beneath heavenly venerable tier could do anything against him. In terms of regulations, ninth heaven celestial kings were the pinnacle. Though heavenly venerable tier was created through the back door by the heaven and earth, if the heaven and earth could really do as they willed like this, would heavenly venerates still emerge? The power of heaven and earth was boundless, but was restricted through regulations. This was the law of how the Genesis world worked, and it could not be gone against. Thus, Heavenborn was indeed very freakish, but there was definitely no way he could be freakish to an unlimited extent. Could it be that I can only deal with him after becoming a heavenly venerate? The large black dog was slightly irritable. Though both he and Ling Han had the potential to become a heavenly venerate, and this chance was even higher in the Flaming Frost realm, that would definitely be a matter of countless years later. To become a heavenly venerate, it was only a small token to spend a few epochs to accumulate enough comprehension and strengthen foundations. If he had to wait this long, the large black dog would not be able to bear it. Ling Han was also thinking deeply, and he said, to deal with Heavenborn, the first thing we have to do is deal with his physique. But aside from heavenly venerable tier, what else could do anything against divine metal? He looked at the large black dog, and the large black dog was also looking at him. The man and dog exclaimed at practically the same time, a heavenly venerate tool. Divine metal was on the same level as celestial king tier, so only something above the level of celestial king tier could damage divine metal. Ling Han took out the divine demon sword. Then the first thing we have to do is boost this divine sword to the heavenly venerable tier. Hiss, that would require a shocking amount of divine metal, the large black dog said through clenched teeth. Ling Han cracked a grin. That would have to depend on you. Why does it have to be me? It is clear that the one benefiting is you, brat. Unless you give this sword to me. The large black dog declared shamelessly. Ling Han said, firstly, you are a ninth heaven celestial king, and possess great power. There are only a limited number that can contend with you in this world. Secondly, you are a dog, and have a good sense of smell. With such a strong nose, it would naturally be easy to find divine. Woof, I'll bite you to death. The large black dog was furious, and immediately pounced out. Naturally, Ling Han could not possibly be a match for a ninth heaven celestial king. He hurriedly called a ceasefire, and then continued, you should know where Wally is staying at, right? I need to find him for something. Oh right, how is your understanding of the fundamental power of the Genesis world? The large black dog's expression turned gloomy. It's difficult, too difficult. The first step of heavenly venerable tier began from the unique power of a dimension, but Wally's model was meant for 6 great fundamental powers, and directly began from the second step. Thus, the large black dog, who was only a ninth heaven celestial king, was completely baffled. Chapter 25-33. Looting. The large black dog took Ling Han to find Wally. Though Wally was a war soldier, he could also be considered as a being that existed independently because he had gained self-awareness. Thus, Zhou Hang had brought him here as a member of the martial academy. How had Wally managed to get past the 9 deaths formation then? He had just run all the way through, suffering blows as he did so. It could not be helped. His body was constructed from a material called superstring, and possessed astonishing self-recovery ability. He was also practically indestructible. Throughout these many years, Wally had simply been absorbing the information of the flaming frost realm. Though he had gone to a high-level dimension before, he clearly had not been qualified to venture into a transcendent dimension yet. When the large black dog and Ling Han arrived, light was flickering in Wally's eyes as he was still absorbing knowledge while he received the two of them at the same time, causing no disruption to either action. Help me analyze this alchemical pill. Ling Han took out the crimson bright fire pill and handed it over to Wally. Wally did not refuse, and accepted the alchemical pill. However, he said seriously, "You owe me 3 pieces of divine metal." It was really expensive to ask this guy for help. Ling Han complained internally, but thinking about how Wally was the product of hard work of an entire dimension over several hundred epochs, it was understandable that his help would be slightly expensive. Wally stopped his absorption of information for the time being, and began analyzing this alchemical pill. He only managed to list out all the ingredients after a day, and also handed over 3 pill recipes, which differed slightly. These were based on reverse engineering the completed alchemical pill. The crimson bright fire pill was already lost in the passage of time. These are the pill recipes that I have completed through the remains of the pill recipe and the completed alchemical pill. The rate of accuracy is 91%, 87%, and 83%, respectively. Wally's expression was solemn. That was his eternal expression. It was as difficult as climbing the skies to see a smile from him. "Wally boy, give Grandpa Dog a smile," the large black dog teased from the sidelines. Wally bared his mouth in a grin. Instantly, his upper lip rose and his lower lip descended, revealing 2 complete rows of teeth. "Are you smiling here or trying to scare me?" The large black dog quickly waved a paw. "How many times has Grandpa Dog taught you? A smile has to be natural, and cannot be pretentious or deliberate." Wally looked at him blankly. In the area of analysis, he was an expert of the highest grade, but in the area of human behavior, he was just a big idiot. Ling Han laughed loudly, and patted the large black dog's shoulder. "Don't force him. I can see that this pill recipe requires a lot of great herbs. I am sadly short of cash now, and can't afford to buy any ingredients at all. Why don't we go off and do a big job?" "Tisk, Grandpa Dog has no benefit at all." "No way." The large black dog immediately refused. Ling Han said calmly, "We're going to loot Heavenborn's place. Up for it? Let's go." The large black dog was immediately interested. Ling Han nodded. "Take Wally as well. Breaking through the formation will need him." The man and dog looked at Wally at the same time, while Wally's expression was completely confused. Though he was not versed in human emotion, he still felt that the expressions of this man and dog were slightly frightening, filled with mischief and trickery. Heavenborn was nurtured by the heaven and earth, and possessed astonishing natural talent. It was said that there were heavenly venerates contending to take him as a disciple after he had come to the martial academy. It was probable that they bestowed a considerable number of precious gifts on him. If they could raid his abode, the loot would definitely be shocking. However, the whole martial academy was under the control of the heavenly venerates. If they boldly committed theft, they would definitely be immediately arrested. Hence, this would need Wally's help, which would allow them to pull the wool over everyone's eyes. The 3 of them were definitely the absolutely perfect trio for being thieves. With Wally in charge of covering their tracks and analyzing and unraveling the formation, they easily penetrated Heavenborn's abode, and with the large black dog, even Heavenborn would not be able to discover that they had snuck in. Ling Han and the large black dog found the treasure chamber, and immediately began to rake in their spoils. Why did Heavenborn not stow these treasures away inside the Black Tower? That was simple. The Black Tower had long since been unusable, and could only be repaired with the powerful might of a heavenly venerate. Previously, Heavenborn could only make the Black Tower become larger, and use it as a weapon to smash his enemies. All the other abilities could not be used at all. There's also divine metal. Ling Han was surprised. He had actually found a piece of divine metal here. Mine, Wally immediately declared. His upgrade required things like divine metal or dimension scrolls. You haven't even finished digesting the dimension scroll, so what are you so rushed for? I'll keep it in reserve for you, Ling Han said immediately. I'll take it. Grandpa Dog still lacks a suitable weapon. The large black dog was also drooling. Ling Han was puzzled. Why do you not even have a celestial tool? It was very ordinary that a normal celestial king did not have a celestial tool, but the large black dog was a ninth heaven celestial king. How could it be that he still would not be able to get any divine metal? Don't remind me. After I sustained severe injury, I was forced to undergo a great rebirth, and could not bring a single piece of possession with me. My celestial tools have probably been seized by others and reforged into something else by now, the large black dog mumbled gloomily. Ling Han laughed. I never expected that there would come a day that you would suffer a loss as well. It's all the fault of that bastard, Zhou Heavenly Venerate. When Grandpa Dog has broken through, I will definitely chop off his dog's head. Pay, chop off his head and kick it around like a ball, the large black dog said angrily. Ling Han nodded. With how slippery the large black dog was, the only one that could cause him to suffer a loss could only be a heavenly venerate. It would be better to have this divine metal devoured by the divine demon sword, Ling Han said. After all, this is illegal goods, and cannot come into light. Though the large black dog was reluctant, he could only agree. Thankfully, there were really quite a lot of treasures in Heavenborn's place. He got a share of a few great herbs at the Celestial King tier. Even if it was not of much use for him to eat them, he still had to end up with something, at least. This damn dog had never done a deal that would result in a loss for him. They retreated, and when they returned, they immediately divided the spoils among themselves. At the first possible chance they got rid of them. Less than 2 days later, Heavenborn discovered that his treasure chamber had been robbed, causing him to fume and jump with rage. Because his losses were too great, even the authorities of Martial Academy had participated in the investigation, but nothing was discovered even after 2 consecutive days of keeping guard. Thus, this matter could only be left unresolved. The large black dog urged Ling Han to see if they could do it again after a few days. But Ling Han shook his head. This kind of job could only be done once. To do a bad deed right underneath the noses of heavenly venerates once was them taking the chance that they were not on guard. But did he really think that a heavenly venerate was just there for decoration? Wally's deception technique could succeed once because the heavenly venerate had not taken notice at all, but to commit the deed again when their tracks were so fresh? It would only be sending themselves into the net. Furthermore, Heavenborn had just been looted, so what could they get even if they went there again now? Goats had to be fattened before slaughter. The large black dog had only said that in a moment of anger. He was the true ancestor of thieves, so how could he not understand? After muttering a few words, he left. He was going to roam the world, and forge a celestial tool for himself. Then, he would get himself enough divine metal to be devoured by the divine demon's sword. Saving the comic life Heavenly Venerable was his greatest wish at present, and had even surpassed his personal desire of becoming a heavenly venerate. Ling Han began to concoct the Crimson Bright Fire Pill. He still did not have much ingredients, so Ling Han could only concoct a single Crimson Bright Fire Pill. He thought for a moment, and did not ingest it himself. Instead, he planned to sell it so he could buy more ingredients and concoct more alchemical pills. He released the news that there was a Crimson Bright Fire Pill available for sale, and soon garnered the interest of a great many people. Interestingly, Xueqi had previously taken out this kind of alchemical pill so he could summon some really strong people in an attempt to kill off Ling Han. Yet now Ling Han had taken out a Crimson Bright Fire Pill as well. Had he robbed Xueqi? But after assessment, this alchemical pill was proven to have been concocted just recently, and had absolutely no relation to the alchemical pill that had belonged to Xueqi. Ling Han took the chance to release the news that he was a 5-star alchemist, and could help others to concoct great Celestial King tier alchemical pills. Of course, his fees would also be exorbitant. This was Ling Han's true motive. Chapter 2534. Advancement again. Alchemy was a very profitable business, especially for a high-level alchemist. Every time they were requested to concoct alchemical pills for others, they would demand an astonishingly exorbitant fee, and if they were to concoct alchemical pills themselves, they would put them on auction. Ling Han wanted more to be requested to concoct alchemical pills for others, and demand great celestial king tier herbs as his fee. In that way, he would not need to concoct too many alchemical pills, and he would have enough ingredients to concoct a new crimson bright fire pill. This time, he was trying to get the ball rolling. As expected, after a few days, there was someone who established communication with him, asking him for help in concocting an alchemical pill. It was only a single person, and there was no expected scene of an endless stream of people lining up to ask for his help. This was very normal. Who knew what Ling Han's skill in alchemy was like? What if he wasted their ingredients, and they ended up with a failed concoction? This first person had come because he was brave. Ling Han only began pill concoction after several days of preparation. Very soon, he completed the pill concoction, and its grade was extremely high at that. That person left in jubilant spirits. Once the news spread out, 3 people came at different times on the second day, requesting Ling Han's help to concoct alchemical pills. Ling Han began to get busy. All celestial kings were extremely wealthy. The longer it had been since they became celestial kings, the more shocking amounts of wealth they naturally possessed, which caused Ling Han's money bag to begin to become fat. He had a celestial physique of time, and concocting a cauldron's worth of celestial king tier pills would only be the matter of a few hours in real time, so the rate at which he was making money was naturally amazing. Ling Han's fame spread farther and farther, and more people came to request him to concoct alchemical pills. His pill completion rate was truly shocking, and as the number of alchemical pills he concocted increased, the grade of the completed pills was also steadily improving. Everyone knew that an impressive alchemy king had appeared in the Martial Academy. 3 years later, bewitching Maiden Ro came out of seclusion. She had successfully broken through to the 3rd heaven. When she knew that Ling Han had arrived, she was naturally overjoyed. And Little Terror also finally saw Ling Han. It immediately rushed over, and almost crushed Ling Han on the ground with a bang. The little guy's power now was too frightening. Its cultivation level was 5th heaven, but its power had soared directly to the peak stage of the 6th heaven, which naturally caused even Ling Han to clench his teeth at the impact. Ling Han laughed loudly, and picked Little Terror up. This little guy is becoming sturdier and sturdier. It should be very delicious. The large black dog appeared, and drooled in Little Terror's direction. Why did he share the same temperament as Hunyeo? How much divine metal have you gotten? Ling Han asked. Hey, do you think that divine metal is cheap vegetables, and can be gotten just anywhere? The large black dog immediately cried out. Grandpa Dog just came back for a breath of fresh air, okay? Ling Han's expression was suspicious. Have you gotten into some kind of mess, and have thus deliberately come back to avoid the trouble? The large black dog immediately changed the topic, his eyes shifting everywhere. This damn dog was indeed not the type to behave, and would cause trouble everywhere. Thankfully, he was a 9th heaven celestial king, or he would have long since been pummeled to death many times over by now. He said a few words, and then left. It was possible that the trouble he had got into this time was not just small trouble. Ling Han did not give him any further regard. He took out the crimson bright fire pills, and passed it to the Empress and bewitching Maiden Ro. After 3 years, he had only managed to concoct 3 pills in total. It should be known that a single crimson bright fire pill was enough to make all celestial kings at 5th heaven and below fight each other over. He had concocted 3 of them in a period of 3 years. This was extremely shocking. They ingested the pills, and began to digest its effects. A great celestial king tier pill could only be digested very slowly. A whole year later, Ling Han had finally completed digesting this great pill, and this was still because he had used time acceleration effects, or it would have needed at least around 1,000 years. The advancement was very obvious. He had originally been in the early stage of the 3rd heaven, and now he reached the late stage in a single stroke. 10 billion years of hard cultivation only resulted in such minor advancement. In truth, the improvement via an alchemical pill would not take into account the acceleration of time. Taking into account Ling Han's time acceleration effects of 1,000 times, a crimson bright fire pill had only saved him 10 million years of hard cultivation. Hence, this kind of advancement was understandable. I cannot ingest another crimson bright fire pill in the short run. As an alchemist himself, Ling Han was the most sensitive about the effects of an alchemical pill. There would be poison left behind by the alchemical pill, and a great problem would result if he ingested another crimson bright fire pill without waiting for this poison to be removed from his body. He inspected carefully, and this poison was actually regulations, but their level was very high. With his ability, he would not be able to remove them in a single stroke. They could only be removed in a slow, consistent process, so it would consume a lot of time. Ling Han came out of seclusion, and the Empress came out very quickly soon after. She also had the greatest eternity everlasting physique, so her time acceleration effects were the same as Ling Han's. However, it was much slower for bewitching Maiden Ro. Not long after, Ji Wuming came over to pay him a visit. At the first instant, he pronounced Ling Han's true identity. Ling Han couldn't help but feel gloomy. He had initially been confident that he could deceive everyone. Having such freakish talent in cultivation, and being a grandmaster alchemist at the same time, there are not many people like that, Ji Wuming said. Moreover, I did not believe that you would die so easily, so I simply guessed that it had to be you. Thankfully, Heavenborn had only battled with Ling Han once, and was not familiar with the latter. Otherwise, the former should have guessed that not only had Ling Han not died, he had also arrived in the martial academy already. It was not only Ji Wuming, Yen Xianlu, and the others also came one after another. They all had guessed it. There was absolutely no way that Ling Han could have died in the celestial realm. They only had not known when he would arrive here. There were also Ling Hua and the other manifestations of the source powers. They had come with the Empress and the others. Source powers of heaven and earth naturally had excellent aptitude, so the rate of their cultivation was astonishing. All 9 of them were already 5th heaven celestial kings. Yet, they had succeeded because they were source powers, but at the same time, it was also their weakness. It was practically impossible for them to break through to the heavenly venerable tier as they were chained to the level of regulations. Their peaceful life was very soon interrupted because Xiao Yingxiong had come again. We battle again in the 9 deaths formation. He issued a challenge. Ling Han was surprised. Why had this guy come so quickly? Had he ingested some kind of natural treasure that caused his battle prowess to improve by leaps and bounds? Otherwise, how could he have such confidence? Sure. Ling Han nodded. In a battle of equal level, he did not fear anyone. 3 days later, Xiao Yingxiong added. The challenge this time soon alerted the entire martial academy. After all, they were both prodigies of the battle role. Not only were the disciples of this present term all very interested, even a considerable number of people from the last term and the term before last decided that they would go and watch the battle. 3 days' time passed very quickly. Ling Han walked towards the 9 deaths formation. After arriving, he couldn't help but grit his teeth. There were too many people here, weren't there? There was a complete sea of heads, and it was not just humans, there were also demi-humans, with tails or had the heads of goats, donkeys and the like. All kinds of races were here. The present flaming frost realm had gathered all the prodigies of various races of the entire Genesis world. It was a complete wild mixture. Xiao Yingxiong was already waiting for him. He was seated on the ground, while a sword was laid out on his legs, but the sword was not unsheathed, feeling like a dragon that was hidden in a valley, and as if it would be able to alarm the heavens the moment it appeared. Seclusion could not allow the use of precious tools, but he was only using the 9 deaths formation to have a fair battle with Ling Han. You're here, Xiao Yingxiong said solemnly. Ling Han smiled. Is this the basis for your confidence? He pointed at his sword. You will know when we battle. Ling Han chuckled, and walked into the great formation on the 3rd level of the 9 deaths formation. He would not become conceited. The only thing that differentiated them was that the other party had not cultivated body arts as well. In terms of pure power of regulation, he was really not the slightest bit inferior in a battle of equal level, or would only have a slight disadvantage. If they were to battle in the great formation of the 4th level, his disadvantage would be too great. Xiao Yingxiong also walked in, and faced Ling Han directly. Not making your move? Ling Han was surprised. Xiao Yingxiong brandished his sword casually, and did not even unsheath it. Then he said, I have. Ling Han chuckled. Looks like asking for a spar is a lie, and you have another motive, right? Chapter 25-35. Xiao Yingxiong's invitation. Clever, Xiao Yingxiong complimented. There is indeed something I wish to discuss with you. Ling Han was surprised. What could there be to discuss between him and Xiao Yingxiong? He pondered for a moment, and then said, "Please go on. Myself and a few others have discovered a historical site from the primitive age, and hope that you can join us to explore it," Xiao Yingxiong said solemnly. Ling Han gave an "Oh. With something as good as that, you would actually think of me?" Not only were he and Xiao Yingxiong not friends, they were instead rivals in love. Of course, this was only Xiao Yingxiong's one-sided opinion. If there was anything good like exploring a historical site, how could he possibly take Ling Han into consideration? Xiao Yingxiong humphed. If it was not necessary, there is absolutely no way you could get such a great opportunity for nothing like this. That is because the key to opening the historical site requires the lifeblood of a great many supreme monarch stars whose evolution index has reached 11. At present, we do not have enough numbers yet. Ling Han couldn't help but think if these words were truth or lie, if this was a fatal trap that was laid out for him. It should be known that once they left the martial academy, there would not be any heavenly venerates guarding them any further. "I need more information about this historical site," Ling Han said. "Take it." Xiao Yingxiong tossed over a jade seal. "I knew you would have this kind of request. Take it and study it. 3 days later, I will come find you again." Ling Han took the jade seal. Xiao Yingxiong turned around and left, without the slightest bit of hesitation. Smiling, Ling Han also exited the Great Formation, just happening to catch sight of Xiao Yingxiong flying off. The spectators were all confused. Who had won or lost this battle? Why had it finished so quickly? Ling Han returned to the abode, and shared the information inside the jade seal with the empress. The information was very detailed. This historical site had once belonged to a ninth heaven celestial king. It was rumored that he had died because he had failed to break through to the heavenly venerable tier. Thus, it was possible that this historical site contained the personal insight of this celestial king. They wanted to obtain and study it, and that could help them to avoid a few wrong turns. Though Xiao Yingxiong was a supreme monarch star whose evolution index was as high as 11, he still did not have absolute confidence that he would definitely become a heavenly venerate. Though heavenly venerates would never die throughout the ages, a single dimension would only have 10 or over a dozen of them. Their numbers were shockingly low. Could it be that there were few prodigies that had emerged throughout history, and there was a lack of supreme monarch stars? No, there were many of them. But becoming a heavenly venerate was really much too difficult. It was extremely possible for even a supreme monarch star to fail, and all his cultivation would thus turn into nothing. An example of failure could possibly be more valuable than a case of success. Hence, even a supreme monarch star like Xiao Yingxiong was tempted and anxious to obtain this insight. Ling Han's heart jolted as well. It was one thing for him to be confident in himself, but the facts were another story altogether. "We should explore it," the empress said. Ling Han nodded. There would not only be the insight of the celestial king in breaking through to the heavenly venerable tier. A person who had been qualified to take this step would definitely be one of the strongest among ninth heaven celestial kings. His treasures should be extremely amazing. Call the large black dog too. This guy is a ninth heaven celestial king. Wally too. There was no need to get the others. If even the large black dog could not deal with it, then even the combined forces of Ling Hua and the others would be useless. Ling Han went to inform the large black dog. This damn dog immediately agreed happily. He very much wanted to get a look at the inside of a celestial king breaking through into the heavenly venerable tier as well, especially of one that had failed. That was because every heavenly venerate that had succeeded had created their own path, so there wasn't much reference value, but a case of failure could be studied, which would allow them to avoid making the same mistakes. Wally had never been proactive about this kind of thing, but did not refuse, either. In any case, no matter what state he was in, he could still refine the dimension scroll. Now that he had gotten these two great helpers in place, Ling Han naturally felt steady. 3 days later, Xiao Yingxiong arrived quietly. After a conversation with Ling Han, he left in satisfaction because he received the response that he had hoped for. Another month later, Xiao Yingxiong sent someone to tell Ling Han that everyone had gathered, and they would be setting out at dawn the next day. Ling Han, the empress, the large black dog, and Wally all arrived at the designated location. Meanwhile, bewitching maiden Rose stayed behind in the martial academy. Her strength was not enough, so it was best that she stayed behind to continue cultivating in the martial academy. Little Terror had also stayed behind as protection for her. Of course, Ling Han had also left behind his spatial celestial tool. All the women would improve much faster if they cultivated inside the martial academy. There were many who came. Ji Wuming, Hua Ferong, as well as a great many that Ling Han did not recognize. They should all be disciples of this term, though they came from different realms. The Rain Emperor, Shi Chanzi, Jia Lan, and the others were not qualified. They were all monarch stars, but they were not supreme monarch stars, so their evolution index was only 10, which did not qualify them to be part of this expedition. Xiao Yingxiong, Gu Haoyi, and Miao Hua were all beings above the level of a monarch star. When he saw the large black dog, Miao Hua immediately humphed coldly. No pets allowed. Pet your sister, your whole family are pets. The large black dog immediately pounced out, pushing Miao Hua into the ground. That brat is the pet here, understood? The large black dog had always been mean. He was clearly a ninth heaven celestial king, yet had never revealed anything of himself. This show of might immediately let everyone know just how incredibly powerful his battle prowess was. So it was a senior. Please forgive us juniors for the rudeness. Gu Hai immediately played mediator. The large black dog spat at Miao Hua, and only then did he release his paw. Miao Hua almost died with fury. He was a supreme monarch star, but someone know, a dog actually spat at his face. But the large black dog's strength was superior to his by who knew how far, so he could only glare helplessly. He swore secretly that when his cultivation level had caught up with the large black dog's, he would definitely get his revenge for this misdeed. Xiao Yingxiong and Gu Hai exchanged a look, both of them frowning slightly. Though they had invited Ling Han, they had not borne him any good intentions. They had planned to kill him in the historical site. However, now that there was this large black dog whose strength was unfathomable, they felt that this was a troublesome matter. It would not be easy for them to make a move. Has everyone arrived? A supreme monarch star asked. He was a fifth heaven celestial king, and was not a local of the flaming frost realm. His name was Lu Hao, and he had arrived at the martial academy long ago, over more than 3 billion years ago. We're missing one other, Gu Hai said. Who is it? Another person asked. His name was Luo Yongqiu, and he too was a fifth heaven celestial king. Haha, am I late? With a loud shout, a frightening aura surged out. A celestial king flew over from afar, his whole body exuding a terrifying aura, with 9 streaks of peculiar light wrapped around him. A ninth heaven celestial king. Ling Han's eyes narrowed. It was the Imperial Void. Ling Han had an absolutely antagonistic relationship with the line of the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerate, and had prior enmity with the Imperial Void, who had repeatedly targeted him and coveted his secrets. Why was this old geezer here? Very simple. The Imperial Void Celestial King was also presently preparing to break through to the Heavenly Venerable tier. Then, the failed example of another Celestial King would have great value as reference for him. In fact, he had greater need of it than Ling Han and his group because he was about to make the breach into the Heavenly Venerable tier, and he had to be extremely cautious. Senior. A ninth heaven celestial king had appeared, and even if all of them were supreme monarch stars, they had no choice but to bow in greeting. The Imperial Void Celestial King smiled. No need for such formalities. Though he had an advantage in cultivation level at present, if he did not break through to the Heavenly Venerable tier, the people that were here now would soon be able to catch up to him in cultivation level, and it was possible that they would even surpass him because the step into the threshold of the Heavenly Venerable tier was really too hard to take. Just look how long had he been stuck in the ninth heaven of the Celestial King tier? Chapter 2536. Battling Imperial Void. The Imperial Void Celestial King naturally spotted the large black dog as well, and his initial smiling expression immediately faded as his eyes turned harsh as well, filled with killing intent. Damn dog, you actually dare appear in front of me again. The large black dog's eyes spun around, showing a hint of guilt, but his tongue did not hold back at all. He exclaimed, "Why would Grandpa Dog not dare appear?" The Imperial Void Celestial King moved aggressively. He was a ninth heaven celestial king, so what reservations did he need to have? In fact, among ninth heaven celestial kings, he was also one of the strongest. Aside from a heavenly venerate, just how many people could suppress him? Boom, the large hand descended, and even the stars were trembling. He was an absolutely powerful celestial king. The large black dogs first stood on ends. Xiao, he suddenly flashed, shockingly quick. Before the large hand landed, he had already run out. Then, he stood on his hind legs, pointed at the Imperial Void Celestial King, and declared, "Bratty Imperial Void, Grandpa Dog will not drop to your level so that your master would not come out and make trouble for Grandpa Dog if I make you cry." Everyone was speechless. It was clear that it was the large black dog who did not dare fight the opponent, but he was actually saying such pleasant words. He truly was extremely cunning. However, managing to escape from the hands of the Imperial Void Celestial King, this large black dog's strength was definitely extraordinary as well, and he could not be underestimated. The Imperial Void Celestial King did not make another move. He had long since known that this large black dog was extremely slippery, and was a specialist in the art of escape. Thus, the difficulty level of capturing him was extremely high. It could be claimed that only a heavenly venerate would be able to achieve this feat. Humph, all of the line of the comic life heavenly venerable are really such cowards, he declared coldly. Ling Han was displeased now. Coughing lightly he said, "The brat over there, why do you look so ugly?" The Imperial Void Celestial King was startled. He looked ugly. He was not an extremely dashing young man, but definitely could not be considered ugly. Furthermore, when one had reached a cultivation level that they had, what significance would ugliness or beauty have? What was most important was strength, and strength was the deciding factor in everything else. Hence, this brat had to be deliberately provoking him. Hee, a mere third heaven junior actually dared to be so arrogant in front of him. This was really laughable. He crossed his hands behind him, and said, "Though the Martial Academy has a rule that one cannot attack another who is inferior by more than 2 cultivation levels, you were the one who provoked me first. In that case, there should be no one who would blame me if I gave you a hard beating." Ling Han laughed. "Imperial Void, let's have a battle in the 9 Deaths formation, would you dare?" The Imperial Void Celestial King scoffed, "I am a great 9th Heaven Celestial King, so why should I lower myself and pull myself down to the same level as you? You are just in the 9th Heaven. Whom among those gathered here today could not achieve that? Hence, there is no need to boast about that." Ling Han stated evenly. "If you are so capable, then only one who can win in a battle of equal cultivation level can truly convince others." Xiao Yingxiong and the others all nodded. If anyone among them here today had difficulty even in breaking through to the 9th Heaven, they would not be qualified to enter the Martial Academy. A higher cultivation level only meant that you started on the path of cultivation earlier. What was key was if you would be able to break through to the Heavenly Venerable tier. And what kind of person had a higher chance of breaking through to the Heavenly Venerable tier? Of course, it had to be one with a higher evolution index, and also one who was stronger in a battle of equal cultivation level. Dare or not dare? Ling Han continued forcefully. The Imperial Void Celestial King was in a slightly awkward position now. He was used to being high and noble. When he was in the celestial realm, he was completely willful and did whatever he liked, killing whomever he wanted to kill. But this was a different place. Even the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable would have to keep a very low profile here, or he would be easily taught how he was to behave properly at any time. He thought for a while. He himself was a supreme monarch star as well, and his evolution index was as high as 11. Furthermore, even if he suppressed his cultivation level, his experience and battle sense would not be affected, so he naturally had a greater advantage in actual battle. Was there any need for him to be afraid? "All right, we will battle," the Imperial Void Celestial King said. Xiao Yingxiong and the others all shook their heads, sighing for the Imperial Void Celestial King. "You still have no idea that this guy is Zhang San or Li Si, right? He has left behind his name on the Eternal Stone, and his rank is as high as 8th place, superior to even Heavenborn. Moreover, he has fought with Xiao Yingxiong just some days ago, and in the end, Xiao Yingxiong was horribly defeated. This guy's evolution index should be on the way to 12. Only Xiao Yingxiong knew that Ling Han's evolution index had not reached 12. Instead, it was his body art that was too frightening, allowing his battle prowess to emulate the most freakish level of an evolution index of 12. This was information that he had obtained in exchange for a terrible defeat. He had no plans to share it with anyone else, but rather planned to take the secret of this powerful body art for his own after he defeated Ling Han. He naturally had an ulterior motive for inviting Ling Han on this venture. The Imperial Void Celestial King really did not know who Ling Han was, and just thought that since they were both Supreme Monarch stars, what did he need to fear? The two of them soon arrived in front of the Nine Deaths formation. Ling Han directly chose the third level of the Great Formation and entered. Without the slightest hesitation, the Imperial Void Celestial King followed him as well. In that way, this could be considered a battle at the same tier. He would move mercilessly, and give Ling Han a terrible defeat so the latter would suffer the consequences of his actions. Young man, your path is still very long. To fight me. Boom! The Imperial Void Celestial King was about to spout out a few more words when he saw an iron fist was already flying towards him, bringing with it a frightening regulation of fire. Humph! He had no choice but to shut up as his palms rose, meeting Ling Han's strike. The two of them battled fiercely, each using their own powerful techniques. It was extremely intense. The Imperial Void Celestial King was slightly surprised, and even more jealous. That was because there were slight signs that Ling Han was overwhelming him. In a battle at the same tier, he was actually inferior to the other party. It should be known that he was a Supreme Monarch star whose evolution index was as high as 11, so who else could be stronger than him? Only one whose evolution index was 12. Though there was not much evidence, if one's evolution index reached 12, he would definitely be able to become a heavenly venerate. For example, Hua Ferong. She was this kind of supreme prodigy. However, the Green Flame's heavenly venerate placed a seal on her so she could aim for even higher, and that was why she had appeared in this lifetime. Still, though the three great heavenly venerates had made predictions, they clearly had been deceived by the heaven and earth. Such a great opportunity presented by the celestial path had simply been a trap. This was something irrelevant to the present. Just how many years had the Imperial Void Celestial King been stuck in the 9th Heaven Celestial King tier? Several epochs. But he had only just vaguely glimpsed hope, and who knew how far he was away from actually breaking through. However, this young man in front of him practically had the potential to rise directly to the Heavenly Venerable tier, so how could he not feel envious? Becoming a Heavenly Venerate was his greatest heart's desire, and also the source of his greatest resentment, surpassing all else. Damn it, he cussed internally. With a thought, a green ancient bell immediately appeared above his head. This was his celestial tool, the ancient bell of Qian. Ring! The ancient bell rang by itself, sending out a series of ripples that spread out in all directions. And with the tolling of the bell, even the space inside this great formation was crumbling bit by bit. The might of the celestial tool was astonishingly great. The Imperial Void Celestial King smirked. Young man, your foundations are far from matching me. This ancient bell of Qian was forged by me plucking 17 types of divine metal, which is equivalent to 17 celestial kings attacking at the same time. How can you block this? Who would have greater battle prowess in a battle at the same tier? Celestial tools. Why, that was simple. Firstly, they were indestructible, and secondly, they could not be destroyed. How could they not be awesome with these two advantages added together? The ancient bell of Qian was forged from melting 17 different types of divine metal together. Though its sturdiness could not be further improved, and it was the same for its sharpness as well, it was equivalent to having 17 celestial kings attacking at the same time, which was terrifying. The tolling of the bell rang out, destroying space layer by layer, possessing formidable might. Yet Ling Han showed a hint of a smile. Chapter 2537. Thoughts cleared. Had Ling Han gone mad? Of course not. He was just feeling pleased because the Imperial Void Celestial King said that this bell had been produced from the fusion of 17 different types of divine metal. 17 types? If it was devoured by the divine demon sword, the might of the divine demon sword would definitely be boosted further. If this was another place, Ling Han would definitely be helpless. That was because the ancient bell of Qian was a 9th heaven precious tool. To say nothing of the fact he would not be able to suppress it, its might after automatic revival would be able to easily cause serious injuries to Ling Han. But here, with the suppression of cultivation level, the level of the ancient bell of Qian would have to drop to the third heaven. In a battle of equals, even if there were 17 people on the other side, what would Ling Han have to fear? He laughed, and finally activated his body art. Instantly, his battle prowess spiked madly. So what if it was a celestial tool? No matter how strong a celestial tool was, it was still just a tool. It was not a human, and there had to be an upper limit to its strength. It is indeed true that you are the sharpest, as well as sturdiest, but battle prowess is not just made up of these two factors. The Imperial Void Celestial King was extremely stunned. Ling Han's battle prowess had suddenly soared at least 4 to 5 times over. Once Ling Han's body art and power of regulation showed their might at the same time, that was definitely not as simple an equation as 1 + 1 = 2, but rather would be soaring 3 times, 5 times and the like. The Imperial Void paled in shock, and finally found out why Ling Han had dared to challenge him. Fuck, was this really a third heaven celestial king? Humph, I possess a celestial tool, so what can you do against me? The Imperial Void Celestial King summoned the ancient bell of Qian back, and it emanated thousands of brilliant rays of light, enshrouding him within this radiance. His meaning was apparent. My battle prowess may be inferior, but my defense is invincible. Just come and try to penetrate my defense. This was very shameless, but it was also very useful. 17 types of divine metal melded together would be equivalent to having 17 celestial kings protecting him together, and added with the Imperial Void Celestial King's own strength, this was a defense that could not be broken through. The Imperial Void Celestial King stood, clasping his hands behind his back. His eyes were set on Ling Han. He had already decided that if he came across the opportunity, he would definitely kill this freakish young man. Is that right? Ling Han smiled slightly, and also summoned the divine demon sword. Shua, a cold light dazzled abruptly as Ling Han swept out the sword towards the precious qi that had descended from the ancient bell of Qian. Boom! With a loud bang, the precious qi was actually torn apart forcefully. Thankfully, the subsequent precious qi also managed to descend in time, guarding this opening, and not allowing Ling Han to take the chance to penetrate through the defenses. The Imperial Void Celestial King was shocked. His precious tool had been forged from a fusion of 17 different divine metals. Though it was impossible that they would truly be fused as one, it was still equivalent to having 17 celestial kings attack at the same time, so was this still not enough? However, this sword of Ling Han's was even more frightening. It had truly fused the might of divine metals together. It was like a third heaven celestial king whose strength had advanced to the fourth heaven through hard cultivation. These were two completely different directions of improvement. With his experience, he immediately cried out and exclaimed, "This is devouring metal." In the whole world, only devouring metal would have this kind of ability. Through devouring various metals that existed in the world, it would raise its own strength, and even break through the limits of divine metal, becoming a precious tool refined by a heavenly venerate. The Imperial Void knew because the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable himself had such a precious tool. Was this destiny? The Imperial Void Celestial King's eyes spat fire. The other party's evolution index was 12, and he even possessed the devouring metal. It was as if the heaven and earth were expressing that this was going to be the next heavenly venerate in this manner. He would not submit. What did he lack? He had already cultivated hard for several epochs, and had always stood at the pinnacle of celestial kings. Why was it not he that had obtained such great fortune? Ah! He roared furiously, and the celestial bell swayed and rang, emanating an even stronger wave. The Imperial Void Celestial King's emotions had gone slightly out of control. He was going to burst with even stronger power, and then kill Ling Han. Unfortunately, this was the 9 Deaths formation, which had been laid out by a heavenly venerate. In fact, it was not just a first or second tier, but rather 5th or 6th tier heavenly venerate. How could the Imperial Void Celestial King possibly break through this formation? Ling Han brandished the sword in a mad series of swipes. Ding 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 wang wang wang. He did not attack the Imperial Void Celestial King, but rather targeted the ancient bell of Qian. That was because he knew that it was impossible to kill the Imperial Void Celestial King. Even if his cultivation level had been suppressed in the formation, there were still heavenly venerates on guard in the martial academy. How could they allow him to do as he liked? Then he would take advantage of this. His right hand brandished the sword in a slash, while his left hand curled into a fist that struck again and again on the ancient bell. This was Fists of Fury, and he had recently instilled various kinds of fist intent into it. It had not completely taken form yet. He only had a vague direction. The Imperial Void Celestial King could be considered a rare opponent. Furthermore, Ling Han's grudge towards him was not a light one. This just happened to correspond to the intent realm of Fists of Fury, allowing him to complete this fist technique quicker. With who the Imperial Void Celestial King was, even if his cultivation level had been suppressed, it did not mean that so had his insight. He couldn't help but go mad with fury. This brat actually dared to use him as a sparring partner. Just how far was he looking down on him? He burst with fury, and launched a powerful counterattack. The ancient bell of Qian glowed, one seal after another flickering, but they were immediately suppressed by a mysterious power. It could not be helped. This was the 9th Death's formation, and even a 9th Heaven Celestial King would have his cultivation level suppressed to the right level when he entered. Ling Han cleared the idle thoughts out of his mind, and completely focused on using Fists of Fury. He had already instilled various types of fist intent into the Fists of Fury in the last few days, but this was a chaotic medley. Not only did it not increase the might of Fists of Fury, they were instead all out of place. Various fist intents were at conflict with each other. In fact, it was even slightly amusing, as if he was a drunkard that was trying out a fist technique. But Ling Han was completely unconcerned. His mind and heart were clear, and could accommodate the entire world. He was going to create a cultivation technique that belonged solely to him. There was no need for technique to be limited to fists, swords, sabers, and so on. When one had reached the height he had, was there any difference? Yes, there was a difference when one used a celestial tool or did not, but aside from this, there was no difference at all. I have a heart that can accommodate the world. My intent realm is this heaven, and this earth, this heart that is free of shackles. Ling Han suddenly laughed loudly. The intent realm of Fists of Fury was too limited, causing him to be restricted to the emotion of fury. This was a small path. My path is so that this heaven can no longer cover my eyes, and this ground cannot bury my heart. I am who I am, the one and only me. Ling Han declared internally, and his thoughts immediately cleared. Crack! Even in the 9 Deaths formation, the sound of a heavenly tribulation immediately rang out. Dense clouds rolled out, with lightning flashing in their depths. This was the arrival of a heavenly tribulation. Ling Han shuddered. His enlightenment had actually drawn a heavenly tribulation. Fuck, was there any need to be so exaggerating? However, he understood as well. It was only because this path of his that was still in an infantile stage was quite awesome, which drew envy from even this transcendent dimension, which intended to get rid of him. It should be known that the stronger the dimension, the better they could accommodate others. In this place, even a 7th-tier heavenly venerate would not be struck by lightning the moment they appeared, yet now Ling Han had just formed the bare framework of a kind of Tao in his mind, and he was already targeted by the heaven and earth. This proved just how extraordinary his Tao was. The Imperial Void Celestial King was extremely shocked. This guy was too frightening. His whole body was flashing with the light of Tao. This was comprehension. But he was clearly fighting, and he could still get enlightenment like this. Furthermore, this had actually drawn out a heavenly tribulation. Just how amazing was this? Too dangerous. Just who was this guy? Determination appeared in the eyes of the Imperial Void Celestial King. He had decided to ruin Ling Han's comprehension. He had to. No matter what Ling Han was comprehending, this was too frightening. He definitely could not be allowed to succeed. A purple light appeared from the Imperial Void Celestial King, and his aura was greatly boosted in an instant. This was a secret technique that the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable had created. The Imperial Void had learned it, but usually would not use it at all. Why was this? This secret technique was too overbearing. It was based on the cultivation level and physique of a Heavenly Venerate. Even if he was a 9th Heaven Celestial King, he still could not use it freely, and would have to pay an exorbitant price. But this time, just for Ling Han, he did not hesitate to wound himself. Chapter 2538. Completion of Intent Realm. What person that had become a heavenly venerate was not an extraordinary genius that was rare to come by in eras and had walked their own path? The sealed emotion heavenly venerable was naturally like this as well. This secret technique he had invented was called the dragon fish technique. The name was not very domineering, but it symbolized how a carp leapt over the dragon's gate and became a dragon from a mortal one. But the heavenly venerable tier was already the supreme pinnacle, so with another leap over the dragon's gate, just how great would their strength be by then? Unimaginable. Just like how the karmic life heavenly venerable had created the indestructible heaven scroll, this dragonfish technique was a secret technique that belonged to the sealed emotion heavenly venerable. The difference was that the indestructible heaven scroll could be cultivated by a cultivator at different cultivation levels, but the dragonfish technique could not. It was true that there were differences in strength among heavenly venerates, but it did not mean that every heavenly venerate was a good teacher. Once the dragonfish technique was used, the Imperial Void Celestial King's aura changed immediately. His whole body was enshrouded in purple light, exuding a supreme air of dominance as he aggressively pounced out at Ling Han. Clang, the heavenly tribulation also formed accordingly, striking down on Ling Han. The problem was that the Imperial Void Celestial King wasn't the one who had attacked first. In other words, at least in the process of this attack, the heaven and earth would not consider that it was the Imperial Void Celestial King that was interfering in Ling Han's tribulation, and thus would not target him. In this moment, it was equivalent to having two great supreme elites targeting Ling Han at the same time. This attack was too frightening. With the dragonfish technique boosting the Imperial Void Celestial King, his battle prowess had directly soared to the peak stage of the fifth heaven, and the heavenly tribulation this time was also extremely violent and wild, close to the height of the sixth heaven. Ling Han laughed loudly, and was actually completely unconcerned. He was still wielding a sword in one hand, with his other curled into a fist. He had an invincible heart. He struck out with the sword, meeting the Imperial Void Celestial King's assault, while his left hand was still balled into a fist, punching out at the heavenly tribulation. Boom! A loud bang rang out as Ling Han stumbled backwards a few steps. Yet he was still laughing loudly. His intent realm had actually become even more complete. Wielding fist and sword at the same time, he only felt that he was fighting to his heart's content. His Tao had finally formed a framework, and there was no flaw in the structure. So what if it is a heavenly tribulation? I am a world of my own, and I myself am the heaven and earth. Ling Han's enlightenment did not cease. His fist technique was presently advancing in the direction of consummate level, and it was the same for his sword art as well. His Tao did not distinguish between fist or sword technique. They were just a way in which he could display his power. His Tao was founded on the fact that he had a heart to be invincible and willpower to pursue freedom, and formed his own Tao. Boom, the heavenly tribulation raged wildly, but the Imperial Void Celestial King did not make any move, and merely retreated continuously. He did not dare to rashly involve himself in the heavenly tribulation. This heavenly tribulation was too frightening, causing a lingering fear to rise up even in him. Once he, too, had to undergo the heavenly tribulation, would he still be able to disrupt Ling Han? However, though he retreated, Ling Han had no plans of letting him go. Ling Han leaped out in pursuit, swinging the divine demon sword in an endless series of attacks. With every sword strike, he would suppress the celestial tool as well, thus allowing the divine demon sword to slowly extract some essence, and steal the divine metal in the ancient bell of Qian in this manner. This naturally was a very, very slow process, but it was effective. However, the heavenly tribulation was really extremely frightening. Ling Han sustained injuries, celestial blood spraying out. This was the flaming frost realm, after all. The might of the heavenly tribulation was too overbearing, and even Ling Han felt troubled. However, he did not retreat from this kind of intent realm, but rather strengthened his Tao as much as possible. Though he could continue to complete it in the future, this was a sudden enlightenment for him this time, and advancement would undoubtedly be the fastest. If he missed this chance, he could only proceed slow and steady in the future. The forming of a cultivation technique would naturally be an extensive process. The Imperial Void Celestial King was extremely depressed. It was clearly Ling Han who was undergoing the heavenly tribulation, yet it was he instead that was being beaten down on. How could there be such a person? The heavenly tribulation was so wild and violent, and he was not undergoing it peacefully, but actually still had to divide his attention. Aren't you afraid that the heavenly tribulation will strike you dead? Logically speaking, undergoing the heavenly tribulation was to be done cautiously, fearing that others would cause disturbance, and thus lead you to a path of no return. As for Ling Han, he took the initiative to attack others. He was practically a weirdo. The Imperial Void had lost his fighting spirit. With the suppression of his cultivation level, there was nothing he could do against Ling Han. What was the point of continuing the fight? When they went out, he could suppress Ling Han with just a single movement, so what need was there for him to fight in such a strained fashion here? However, though he wanted to leave, Ling Han did not allow it. True, Ling Han had not absorbed all of the essence of the ancient Bell of Qian, so how could he be willing to let the Imperial Void Celestial King leave? After this time, would the Imperial Void Celestial King still agree to have a fair battle in the Nine Deaths formation with Ling Han? Impossible. Hence, if Ling Han wanted to extract the essence of divine metal from the ancient Bell of Qian again, that would have to wait until Ling Han himself had become a Ninth Heaven Celestial King. It would take too long. What are you running for? Our battle hasn't finished yet. Ling Han said. The line of sealed emotion had gone too far. It was rare to come across such a good opportunity, so he naturally would not let the Imperial Void Celestial King go. The Imperial Void Celestial King was speechless. He gritted his teeth, yet still made no move to attack. He could not afford to trifle with this kind of heavenly tribulation. What was more frightening? The heavenly tribulation would not be affected by the Nine Deaths formation, and what would be falling on him would definitely be of the Ninth Heaven, yet his cultivation level had been suppressed by the Great Formation, and was only limited to the Third Heaven. Wasn't that just committing suicide? Precisely because he had thought of this, he was extremely determined not to ever make any move, and merely parried in defense. He would bear it, and after bearing it for one day, he would go all out to break through the siege. In the Flaming Frost Realm, the heavenly tribulation would last for a day. Ling Han knew this as well, and a slight smile appeared on his face. If there was a day's time, that would be enough for the divine demon sword to feast to satisfaction. A day passed, and the heavenly tribulation could only disperse helplessly. No matter the dimension, there were rules that had to be adhered to. This was unlike hysteria, which had transformed into a dimension itself, and could simply act willfully. Ah! The Imperial Void Celestial King burst out once more. Using the dragonfish technique, he went all out to break through the siege. At this point, even Ling Han could not block him. After all, the other party was one of the strongest celestial kings in the history of the celestial realm, so his battle prowess was naturally powerful. Ling Han stopped, breaking into a grin. He had truly gained a lot in this battle. Firstly, his Dao heart had finally reached great accomplishment level, and he had formed his own Dao. Secondly, the divine demon sword had extracted at least 70% of the essence of the ancient Bell of Qian, and was satiated. Its might had greatly increased. He walked out of the Great Formation as well, and saw that Xiao Yingxiong and the others were all waiting outside. Meanwhile, the Imperial Void Celestial King had recovered his calm expression. The aura of a Ninth Heaven Celestial King spread out strongly, as if it would go out of control at any moment, and move to inflict injury. The large black dog stood next to Ling Han, and rose on his two hind legs, one paw resting on Ling Han's shoulder, expressing, "This brat is under Grandpa Dog's protection. Who dares to make a move?" The Imperial Void Celestial King frowned. He naturally did not fear the large black dog, but the latter had also been cultivating alongside a heavenly venerate, so how could his battle prowess be underestimated? With him protecting Ling Han, the chances of him succeeding in killing Ling Han were too low, practically close to impossible. Was it really so difficult to kill a Third Heaven Junior? "Let's go," Gu Hai said. They had not entered into the formation and watched the battle, so they could leave some face for both Ling Han and the Imperial Void Celestial King. Otherwise, no matter who lost, they would be embarrassed, and who knew, maybe they could not bear to venture to the historical site together any further. But unlocking the historical site required enough lifeblood of Supreme Monarch stars. What if there weren't enough of them? They set out, and the Imperial Void Celestial King's expression shifted quickly. He was continuously thinking about how he was to kill Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't help but think that he definitely had to have a halo of calamity around him. See, he hadn't revealed his identity at all, but he had still clashed with the Imperial Void Celestial King. They set out, and after 3 years, they finally arrived at their destination. It was an eerie valley, filled with fog. This fog was extremely poisonous, and even celestial kings would not be able to withstand it for long, and would have to use alchemical pills. Gu Hai and the others had long since made preparations, and distributed the alchemical pills among themselves. Ling Han did not ingest it directly. Instead, he examined it carefully first. With his insight as a 5-star alchemist, he would be able to easily distinguish if there was something off about this alchemical pill. There was no problem. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.